Chapter 5:15. At the back of Ji-Lu City, the huge tentacle-like demon god pillars were wriggling about. The eyes on the demon god pillars would turn from time to time, blinking, looking particularly terrifying. A strange sound came from the demon god pillar. It was a sound that humans and even servants could not make. This was the unique cry of the demon god pillars. Along with the demon god pillar's cry, dense purple fog was emitted from the demon god pillar's eyes. The purple mist didn't move fast, but it was very powerful. The first half of the Holy Grail enhanced version of Ji-Lu City was basically destroyed by Wu Ming and Ibaraki's noble artifacts. However, the second half of Ji-Lu City was still intact because of Wu Ming's noble artifacts. When the purple fog emitted by the demon god pillars came in contact with the palaces and pavilions of Ji-Lu City, the moment it came in contact with them, those palaces and pavilions were immediately corroded. It was like a deadly poison. Although the purple fog moved slowly, because it didn't encounter any resistance, gradually, the buildings in the back half of Ji-Lu City, with the demon god pillars as the center, melted away. Taking a closer look, nearly half of the buildings in the back half of Ji-Lu City had been corroded and melted away. The melted buildings were like ordinary water that blended into the ground. Although the ground wasn't decayed, the gradual blackening of the ground proved that it didn't escape the corrosion of the poison. Nightingale pledge, I will eradicate all poisons and all harmful things, in an instant, along with the release of the true name of this precious artifact. A part of the purple mist in front of the demon god pillar disappeared, including the ground that had already turned black. The ground returned to its original color. Not only that, but there were also signs of sprouting on the ground that was covered by the relic. Oh, it's your nurse again. We really don't get along well. At this moment, Shutendaji's voice came from the demon god pillar. However, the demon god pillar's voice wasn't completely Shutendaji's. There was a strange sound mixed in as well, which was probably the demon god pillar's own voice. Without a doubt, Wu Ming's guess was correct. However, Nightingale did not answer demon god Shooting's question. Instead, she tried her best to unleash her noble artifact. Nightingale's noble phantasm, I will eradicate all poisons, all harmful things, forbidden phantasm, was an area with Nightingale as the center. It could nullify all poisons and attacks. This noble phantasm was a concept noble phantasm. It was a combination of the spiritual sublimation of Nightingale, who galloped on the battlefield and faced death, coupled with various anecdotes of her, as well as the concept of angel in white who helped the sick and wounded, which was established in modern times. It was proven that a concept relic had an advantage over a physical relic. It was a grade C+ anti-army relic. I will eradicate all poisonous and harmful creatures. The territory that it displayed was like an invincible holy territory. There was no poison or harm at all. The surrounding purple fog surged violently into this area, intending to corrode it. However, no matter how much of it there was, it was useless. The poison that entered was completely eliminated by this precious artifact. As this noble phantasm was centered around Nightingale, while Nightingale was unleashing her noble phantasm, she was constantly moving towards demon god Shutting. However, as the range of the noble phantasm was not very large, the moving Nightingale had already seen such a scene. Amidst a large expanse of purple mist, a circle without any purple mist was moving towards the most important sky pillar. It gave off a feeling of a mantis trying to stop a chariot and overestimating its own capabilities. However, that was the truth. Looking at Nightingale who was moving towards him with all her might, demon god Shutting laughed. He. If it was the previous me, you would indeed be my nemesis. However, this is a demon god pillar, Miss Nurse. The moment demon god Shutting finished speaking, an even thicker dark purple fog emerged from behind the demon god pillar. Just by looking at it, Nightingale, who was a berserker, could feel the danger from it. The dark purple fog contained a large amount of magic and rushed towards Nightingale's noble phantasm domain at an extremely fast speed. No matter what it was, there was a limit to it. Wuming's almost infinite magic, Avalon, which was rumored to be able to block even a world-defying noble phantasm, and Nightingale's noble phantasm domain were the same. The reason why Wuming's magic was said to be infinite was because of his overly large base, super recovery speed, and the fact that he had no place to use these 3 points. The reason why Avalon could block the world-defying noble phantasm was because Avalon had not encountered a stronger attack. At the very least, Wuming believed that if he used the Great Source to launch an attack, Avalon would not be able to block it. Since that was the case, Nightingale's noble phantasm domain also had its limits. It seemed like Nightingale's noble phantasm could completely restrain shutting Doji's poison. However, if it encountered a large amount of poison that could not be eliminated in time, or if it was not poison but a powerful magic attack, Nightingale's noble phantasm domain might not be able to eliminate it completely. Demon God Shutting had such a plan. He did not continue to release poison. Instead, he released the Demon God Pillar's Demon Fog skill. The powerful demon fog surged towards Nightingale's domain. As expected, although Nightingale's noble phantasm had eliminated part of the mana fog, most of it remained and continued to fly toward Nightingale within the noble phantasm. Nightingale did not say a word, allowing the dark purple fog to gradually approach her. She knew that she could not resist it. Mystery would be ineffective in front of a higher level of mystery. This was probably the theory behind it. Nightingale was considered a modern person. In terms of mystery, she was much weaker than the demon god Pillar. Moreover, Nightingale's noble phantasm was only a Great Sea noble phantasm. It was impossible for it to eliminate any damage. In this case, Nightingale, who did not have any other powerful abilities, might be defeated this time due to Berserker's impulsiveness. However, she did not regret it. If she wanted Berserker to regret it, she might have to wait until her next life. Of course, if Nightingale was alone, she would definitely be defeated here. However, there was no doubt that Nightingale was not alone. Whoosh! Accompanied by the sound of chains, Nightingale was tied up by a silver-white chain and was pulled out of the attack range of the dark purple fog. Oh, you're not satisfied with the speed? Demon God Shutting spoke again. After all, no matter if it's Shutendaji or the Demon God Pillar, they're all my enemies, Wuming replied Demon God Shutting calmly as he kept the pseudo-heavenly lock back into the golden ripple. As Nightingale's noble phantasm was still activated, although the poisonous fog had spread over, it did not corrode Wuming. Then play with me for a while. My new enemy. Looking at the dark purple fog that was controlled by Demon God Shutting, Wuming began to recall what Tamamonome had said. Chapter 5:16. Wuming was on his way to Demon God Shutting. When Wuming passed by the central Great Hall, he discovered that Tamamonome was still sitting on the platform in front of the hall, not moving at all. And at this moment, the omnipresent poison gas was emitted from the central Great Hall, about to reach Tamamonome. Even people who didn't know what the mist was would feel danger, let alone Wuming who knew what the purple mist was. Wuming extended his hand and golden ripples appeared. The pseudo-heaven lock appeared from the ripples and in an instant, the pseudo-heaven lock wrapped around Tamamonome. Immediately afterwards, Wuming waved his hand and the chains pulled Tamamonome over. Tamamonome didn't resist and let Wuming pull her over with the chains. Catching Tamamonome and retrieving the chains, Wuming asked subconsciously. Why are you still here? The demon god Pillar's attack is already here. The reason why Wuming asked this was because even if Tamamonome had the immunity granted by the Holy Grail, even if she could defend against the demon god Pillar's poison, the demon god Pillar still had other attacks. Since the poison gas could reach here, the demon god Pillar's other attacks would naturally be able to as well. However, in response to Wuming's question, Tamamonome smiled sweetly. didn't you tell me to stay here? This is your promise. Tamamonome winked at Wuming like a mischievous child. With Tamamonome's words, Wuming felt rather awkward. Actually, Wuming didn't care about his words at all. Seeing that Tamamonome had told him the truth, Wuming only warned Tamamonome not to play any tricks behind his back. Wuming only used the words, "Stay here and don't go anywhere," to warn her. Wuming didn't think that Tamamonome wouldn't do anything in the face of danger. Who would have thought that Tamamonome would be so serious? Take it that I didn't say it well. However, remember this. You can go back on an unimportant agreement like this when your life is in danger. Wuming said very seriously. But that was my first promise with you. I don't want to break it just like that. However, since you personally came to help me break the promise, then I'll let it go this time. Tamamonome smiled, acknowledging Wuming's words. Also, Lord Sarandar, how much longer are you planning to hug me? Tamamonome smiled innocently. Wuming's expression turned awkward, and he quickly put down Tamamonome. After using the pseudo-heaven lock to pull Tamamonome over, Wuming withdrew the heaven lock. Wuming then hugged Tamamonome like hugging a cat. Speaking of which, hugging Tamamonome was no different from hugging a cat. Cough cough, back to the main topic. Since you've kept your promise, I'll temporarily treat you as my partner. Keep walking towards the city gate and meet up with Chaldea's master. Although Wuming said that he would treat Tamamonome as his partner purely because of the promise, Wuming did not completely believe him. Who would completely believe a strange woman who was originally an enemy but suddenly said that she wanted to marry you when she saw you? Seeing that Tamamonome did not try anything funny, Wuming decided to temporarily let her join the party. Moreover, even if Tamamonome betrayed him, it would be fine. Karnak was there, so he was not afraid of Tamamonome betraying him. Tamamonome nodded regretfully, as if she was unhappy that she did not become his wife. However, Tamamonome seemed to have thought of something, and she nodded honestly, and then asked. What about you, Lord Sarandar? If I'm not wrong, you're going to destroy the demon god pillars, right? Wuming naturally nodded and admitted it. There was nothing to hide. Could it be that Wuming came here specifically to save Tamamonome? Wuming and Tamamonome's relationship was not that good. Regarding this, I have something to say. Tamamonome bowed to Wuming, as if she was really putting herself in the position of a subject. Wuming nodded. Since there was information, he naturally had to listen to it. After Wuming nodded, Tamamonome spoke. Actually, the Holy Grail was placed with Judge Ji, but I feel that this matter has nothing to do with her. It was completely planned by Shutendaji. You are indeed the concubine of justice. Wuming nodded. Previously, when Shutendaji had mouthed to Wuming to wait for you in Jiro City, Wuming had more or less guessed it. After all, Jiro City was the residence of Judge Ji, the monster of the city. It wasn't strange for it to become a noble artifact. Actually, when your noble artifact landed in this city, even though Judge Haim borrowed the power of the Holy Grail, in order to resist your somewhat cheating noble artifact, Judge Haim herself probably didn't have a good time waiting for me. Shutendaji didn't take back the Holy Grail and instead left it with Judge Haim. Hearing this, Wuming came to a realization. This made sense. Even if Wuming's abnormal cheating noble artifact was blocked by Jiro City, it shouldn't have left Jiro City in ruins. It shouldn't have left anything behind and directly exploded into ashes. If he borrowed the power of the Holy Grail, then it made sense. Listen to your nonsense. Have you never seen Judge Ji? Wuming asked. After all, Tamamonome's words showed that she didn't know the truth. That's right, Sarandar-sama. Shutendaji asked me to stand guard here after Punbu-ji blocked your noble artifact. I will try my best to delay you with the formation of the formation. Suzuka Guzan and Ibaraki Doji were also sent out. Then, Wuming knew what happened after that. Karna stalled Suzaku Guzan. Wuming came here and was told the reason by Tamamo no Mae, and when he returned, he was stopped by Ibaraki. They fought and Ibaraki self-destructed. In the end, Shutendaji died, but the demon god pillar was summoned. Actually, I wanted to visit Judge Ji after you left and retrieve the Holy Grail for you. But because of the agreement between you and me, I didn't do so. Wuming raised his eyebrows. So you're blaming me? Okay, it seems like you're blaming me. Asterisk cough cough asterisk Wuming shook his head and said. I don't think that even if you take the Holy Grail away, the demon god pillar can't be summoned. Wuming believed that Shutendaji's death was the trigger for the demon god pillar to be summoned. It was very likely that Shutendaji had done something to the Holy Grail from the beginning, using his own life as the trigger. Once Shutendaji left, the Holy Grail would automatically activate and summon the demon god pillar with Shutendaji's consciousness. Moreover, it's hard to say if you can defeat Judge Ji. Actually, when Wuming was hugging Tamamo no Mae, Wuming had already noticed that Tamamo no Mae didn't have much fighting strength. Compared to the white-faced, golden-haired nine-tailed fox Tamamo no Mae who was recorded as one of the three demons, the current Tamamo no Mae was just a support fox. Although that's the case, I don't think that Judge Ji will fight back. Tamamo no Mae smiled. This made Wuming puzzled. Could it be that these two were good friends? Chapter 5:17. Facing Wuming's doubts, Tamamo no Mae covered her mouth with her sleeve and smiled. That's what your concubine thinks. That's why your concubine said that the summoning of the demon god pillar had nothing to do with Judge Heim. Damn, she's even keeping me in suspense. Wuming shook his head helplessly. Since there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Nightingale probably can't hold on any longer. With that, Wuming prepared to leave. Wuming, Sama. Tamamo no Mae suddenly opened her mouth and called Wuming by his real name. Wuming turned his head and stared at Tamamo no Mae. Facing Wuming's stare, Tamamo no Mae smiled apologetically and said. You're an existence blessed by Amaterasu Amikami's incarnation. Make good use of that power. With that, Wuming left. After all, if he delayed any longer, Nightingale really wouldn't be able to hold on. Following that, Wuming recalled the scene from before. Wuming used the pseudo-heaven lock to pull Nightingale back. Blessing from the sun god. Wuming recalled Tamamo no Mae's words and thought of the sun rain. By the way, Shutendaji, have you ever felt the despair brought by the sun? With that, Wuming closed his eyes and began to feel the mysterious power that entered his body without him noticing. Oh, I didn't even feel despair from Minamoto no Reiko. Can you make me feel despair? Demon god Shutendaji let out a strange sound. Following that, he began to make the first move. The countless eyes on the demon god pillar spun faster and faster, gathering magical power. Following that, each eye released a heat ray comparable to a holy sword. The heat rays gathered together and formed a huge pillar of light with a diameter of 100 meters, attacking Wuming and Nightingale. Wuming opened his eyes and waved his hand. Gate, Nightingale chanted a simple incantation, and a purple ripple appeared beneath her feet. Nightingale fell down in an instant. After Wuming heard a scream, Nightingale was completely engulfed by the purple ripples. Arthur's gift armor. After releasing the concept relic once again, the armor on Wuming's body detached and formed a shield. The shield formed a light film and welcomed the heat rays that the demon god shot out. Zzz, the expected explosion did not happen. The shield's light membrane disintegrated all the heat rays from the demon god wine swallowing, turning them into pure magic power that spread out in all directions with a sizzling sound. Gate, chanting the incantation again, Wuming's figure behind the shield disappeared, leaving only a purple ripple. Suddenly, the demon god pillar made an incomprehensible sound. It was a scream that belonged to the demon god pillar. Behind the demon god pillar, Wuming was holding his holy spear. The front half of the holy spear had already pierced one of the eyes behind the demon god pillar. Although there were eyes behind the demon god pillar, because Wuming appeared too quickly, the demon god pillar did not react at all. As for how Wuming came over, the purple ripple that was slowly closing behind Wuming became a powerful explanation. Wuming could use the teleportation portal to any place he had been to and any place he could see. Wuming pulled the holy spear out of the demon god pillar's eye, jumped back, and left the demon god pillar's body. The moment he left, a large amount of dark purple fog appeared from the eyes of the surrounding demon god pillars. Without a doubt, if Wuming did not dodge, he would have been enveloped by the dark purple fog. Without the protection of his armor, Wuming did not dare be careless. Even if the dark purple fog did not seem like poisonous fog, who knew whether it would dissolve in an instant? Because of the damage, the demon god pillar stopped releasing heat rays. And because of this, Wuming's noble artifact also stopped. However, Wuming did not let the noble artifact recover his armor. Compared to the permanent noble artifact's armor form, the shield form after true name liberation was much more useful. However, it was unable to move in time. The demon god Jiao-Tun naturally noticed that the shield did not arrive at Wuming's side in time. Immediately, the eyes behind the demon god pillar began to revolve violently. Along with the condensation of magic, heat rays were also released. The target was naturally Wuming, who was behind the demon god pillar. Gate, the shield that appeared from the purple ripple blocked the demon god pillar's attack. Although the shield itself was unable to come over in time, Wuming had a way to make the shield come over. The teleportation gate that Wuming used to teleport behind the demon god pillar was not closed. Wuming expanded it and opened another teleportation gate in front of him. Naturally, the shield could come over. Next, Wuming used the teleportation gate to launch a sneak attack on the demon god pillar. The demon god pillar attacked Wuming, while Wuming used the teleportation gate to block the damage. Although it seemed like Wuming had the advantage, that was not the case. Because Wuming had the concept noble artifact, the demon god pillar was unable to hurt Wuming. However, Wuming's attacks were also ineffective against the demon god pillar. Wuming stabbed in different places with his spear. However, after stabbing, the demon god pillar's powerful body would heal his injuries. One was the Dragon of Origin's spiritual base, while the other was the demon god pillar controlled by Shutendaji. Both of them were life forms with a high degree of mystery. This created a very awkward situation. Wuming could not hurt the demon god Shutendaji, while the demon god Shutendaji could not hurt Wuming. Ah, your tortoise shell is really tough. Shutendaji was not upset at all. Your recovery ability is not bad either, demon god Shutendaji. Wuming replied. He, since that's the case, I won't play with you anymore. After demon god Shutendaji finished speaking, the huge demon god pillar began to move towards Gadatsi. She was not prepared to fight this unsolvable battle with Wuming. She was prepared to get rid of the most important person. Wuming would definitely not allow that. Once again, he used the teleportation gate to arrive at one of the demon god pillar's eyes and stabbed with the holy spear. The demon god pillar was already used to having its eyes pierced, and because Shutendaji was not prepared to pay attention to Wuming, the demon god pillar did not move at all. However, Wuming smiled. Found it. Wuming said before that he wanted Shutendaji to experience the despair brought by the sun, and closed his eyes to feel the blessing of the sun rain. Naturally, he would not play such a boring game with demon god Shutendaji. The reason why Wuming kept stabbing the demon god pillar was actually to find the holy grail inside the demon god pillar. Wuming did not think that the summoned demon god pillar would put the holy grail aside and not devour it. It could be said that without the holy grail, the demon god pillar's strength would definitely decrease. However, Wuming did not want to take out or destroy the holy grail. At this moment, a large amount of black fog suddenly enveloped Wuming. This was a magic corrosive fog that was even purer than the dark purple fog from before. Oh, I already knew that you were looking for the Holy Grail. You should thank me I let you find it on purpose. Shutendaji's mocking voice could be heard. After all, Shutendaji was not an idiot. He guessed what Wuming was thinking, so he set up this trap to make Wuming fall into it. Of course I knew that this was a trap. After all, if it was you, it would be impossible for me to find the Holy Grail, so I took the initiative to jump into this trap. Wuming's voice came from the black fog, and it was a rather spirited voice. It did not sound like it was being corroded at all. After all, only this way can I release my authority. Chapter 5:18. Although Wuming had cheated, he did not have any trump cards like the Savior's Sword or the 12 clones because of Celander's spiritual base. Wuming had only created an ordinary spiritual base in the root of Genesis and sent it to this singularity. Celander's identity was created by Maeve using the Holy Grail, so Wuming did not choose to interfere. After all, being invited in and barging in were two different concepts. Moreover, even without the Savior's Sword and the 12 clones, Wuming was not weak. However, although he wasn't weak, he couldn't really injure demon god Shutting without using a noble artifact. If he wanted to cripple him, he would have to use a super energy-storing noble artifact again. However, Wuming did not plan to use a relic in the first place. As he had a concept relic to defend himself, the demon god pillar's attack could not hurt Wuming. It was a sad story. Therefore, Shutenji could only use the Holy Grail to lure Wuming out from behind the tortoise shell. Wuming also needed to come into contact with the Holy Grail, so Shutenji's actions helped Wuming. Previously, Wuming had received the sun rain from Tamamonome and received the sun god's blessing passively. After Wuming found out that the blessing was from the sun god, he wanted to use it to blow up the demon god Shutenji. How would he blow it up? Of course, he would use his authority to transform into the sun. With the sun god's blessing, Wuming did not need to change his class. He could directly use the Holy Grail to connect with the root of Genesis and use the sun god Shutenji. Of course, due to various factors, this move was only a one-time use. After it was used, it would be gone. However, based on the current situation, Wuming felt that it was worth it. If the demon god Shutenji was allowed to wreak havoc in the American continent, the entire continent would probably turn into a land of poison in a few days. This proved the saying once again. Even if he left, Shutenji would still cause trouble for Wuming. That was why Wuming decided to directly use the sun god's blessing upon seeing Shutenji turn into a demon god pillar and connect to the Great Origin's usage of the Holy Grail. This was also why Wuming wasn't the slightest bit nervous even after falling into Shuting's trap. Because the sun's flames would burn everything. For the sake of victory, quickly come before me. Undying sun, please bestow upon me a shining steed. Horses with enough intelligence, bring me the light will that symbolizes your master. After Wuming finished chanting, the fog surrounding Wuming began to glow. Boom! A ball of golden flames broke out from the fog with an explosion, starting to burn on the demon god pillar. The demon god pillar once again let out an incomprehensible sound of pain. General, demon god Wine Tun. Immediately afterwards, the golden flames instantly covered the entire demon god pillar. A strange scene appeared in G-Road City. The giant pillar burning with golden flames kept twisting, as if trying to get rid of these deadly flames, but it couldn't get rid of them. A deep sense of powerlessness came from this flame pillar. Amaterasu. On the hillside outside G-Road City, Tamamonome looked at this scene and said softly. Ha! Caster, what did you say? Gadotsi, who was standing beside Tamamonome, asked doubtfully. Nothing, Master Sama. Tamamonome smiled and covered it up. Gadotsi didn't ask again, but focused on the giant flame pillar. Just now, the burning of the demon god pillar made Gadotsi shout. She was very excited, and now she calmed down. Nightingale, who was teleported by Wuming to Gadotsi's side, saw that the virus was about to be finished and relaxed a lot. Amaterasu. Karna said faintly. He heard Tamamonome's words. Matthew and Karna, two people, one on the left and one on the right, stood beside Gadotsi and Tamamonome. The former was guarding his senior, and the latter. It seemed that because of the sun attribute, Karna had a good impression of Tamamonome. At least, he could talk to her and wouldn't ignore her. Of course, Tamamonome was also very interested in this same kind. As long as it was related to the sun, it was a good thing. Immediately afterwards, the golden flames slowly disappeared, and the huge demon god pillar disappeared along with it. There was no doubt that the demon god pillar disappeared. With Wuming's power, the sun incarnation disappeared, just like Lev in the Winterwood City. It's just that the demon god pillar, Florence, died, and there was still Lev left, but demon god Wine-Tun died. There was nothing left. No, it should be the only thing left. Wuming looked at the original position of the demon god pillar, and thought with a strange expression. At this moment, a girl who was dressed like a Japanese princess was lying on the demon god pillar's position. Her eyes were spinning in a spiral shape. There was no doubt that this girl was unconscious, and it wasn't light. Wuming could faintly hear the unconscious girl mumbling something subconsciously. No, no more torture, no more torture, Wuming smiled, not knowing what to do. Looking at this princess girl who was no longer being tortured, she was probably talking about Tamamonome's punishment princess. It seemed that Tamamonome had been brought into the demon god pillar when it appeared. Otherwise, Wuming didn't think that Tamamonome would have been able to survive until now in the demon god pillar's attack range. I think I understand why Tamamonome said that Tamamonome wouldn't be the one who summoned the demon god pillar. Looking at Tamamonome's appearance, she had been unconscious for a long time. She had probably fainted after blocking Wuming's treasured artifact. Shutendaji placing the Holy Grail in front of the unconscious Tamamonome made sense. Shaking his head, Wuming stopped paying attention to Tamamonome and looked at his hand. Wuming held the golden Holy Grail with one hand. Sensing the magic on it, Wuming smiled. He had finally recovered a Holy Grail. Not long after, Gadotsi's group arrived. As if it was a coincidence, when Gadotsi's group arrived, Tamamonome turned into magic and left. After blocking Wuming's treasured artifact, being sucked into the demon god pillar, and being injured by Wuming's sun incarnation, it was already a miracle that she was able to last until Gadotsi's group arrived and didn't leave with the demon god pillar. Placing the Holy Grail in his golden ripples, Wuming looked at Gadotsi and sighed. Finally, the first Holy Grail has been collected. Why do I feel so tired for some reason, Wuming thought. Chapter 5:19. Wuming did not choose to let Chaldea retrieve the Holy Grail. Not to mention that Chaldea had not been contacted yet. Moreover, even if Wuming was contacted, he would not easily hand over the Holy Grail that he had just obtained to Chaldea's group. It was not that Wuming was greedy, but because Wuming was worried that the Holy Grail newly created by the Magic King would have some kind of trap. Wuming did not think that the Magic King's game would be so simple with only a few forces. However, it seemed that for the current Gadotsi and others, the 5 forces were indeed difficult. However, to Wuming, the current chaotic battle between the 5 forces did not pose much of a threat. Although he did not know why the Magic King did not appear in person, even so, he could not do anything to Wuming. After all, it was not his main body. However, the Magic King who did not appear gave Wuming a feeling that there was something more important that he could not come. However, when they were in the underground of London, the Magic King said to Gadotsi and others that as long as they did not open all 7 singularities, they would not be a threat to him at all. Just like how ordinary people would not care whether ants could hurt them, whether it was 1 ant or 7 ants, it was all the same. According to the Magic King, only when all 7 singularities were saved, would he take the initiative to kill Godotzi and others. During this time, Wuming did not think that the Magic King would sit in front of the TV and eat popcorn while watching Godotzi and others take risks. Then there was no doubt that the Magic King also had something to do. However, because of Wuming's intervention, Wuming was not sure whether the Magic King really did not eat popcorn and sit in front of the TV to watch what happened at this singularity. In any case, these new Holy Grails did not make Wuming feel at ease, so Wuming and Godotzi agreed that the Holy Grails that they obtained later would be temporarily guarded by him. Wuming and others walked out of Jiro City and began to move towards Riverton in the north. Jiro City did not seem to be a noble phantasm that would disappear with the servants. The Japanese forces were destroyed, and the Holy Grail was recovered by Wuming, but Jiro City was still there. It was still the same ruins, or even worse, razed to the ground. Let's not talk about the collision between Wuming and Ibaraki Boy's noble artifacts. The demon god pillars, poisonous fog and all kinds of destruction were enough to destroy Ji-Wei City, which had lost its defenses due to Ji-Ji's coma and overload. Wuming guessed that Shutendaji, because of this, he used the Holy Grail to summon the summon monsters to leave the summon monsters, leaving only the servants. Wuming Doji. Godotzi, Matthew, and Nightingale was to be in the middle was to the rears. In this way, Wuming Doji's group did not move fast, and it could even be said that they were moving slowly. After all, they had just won a battle, and there was no need to be too anxious, so Wuming Doji's group of 6 walked slowly. In fact, it was also to take care of Godotzi. After all, it was rare for them to come into contact with the current crisis, so there was no need to carry Godotzi as if they were transporting goods. However, they could not be too careless, as the current lineup of 6 people could be seen. Wuming Doji and Karna were in front and behind, while Matthew and Nightingale were guarding Godotzi in the middle. As for Tamamo Mei, who had been following behind Wuming, she followed by herself. Besides, it would not affect them much, so Wuming acquiesced. However, it seemed that it really did affect them. Along the way, Godotzi Doji and Matthew kept looking at Wuming strangely, as if they were shy, as if they were praising him, as if they were gratified. In short, it was that kind of strange look that Wuming could not put his finger on. The more Wuming Doji thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong, so he asked Tamamo Mei. Did you say something strange when you came here and met up with Tachika Doji and the others? Lord Celander, you're overthinking it. I merely politely introduced myself as your fiancé to you, master. Tamamo Mei smiled elegantly at Wuming. Ah. Wuming Doji finally understood why Godotzi Doji and Matthew Doji were looking at him in such a way. But I didn't say that I wanted you to be my fiancé. Forget it, forget it. Let's leave it at that for now. Seeing that it was because Tamamo Mei had fought the demon god Shutting, Wuming Doji decided to take a loss and leave their relationship at that for the time being. Hello, speaking of which, why is Ms. Nightingale here? Wuming asked Godotzi and the others behind him. Although Wuming's team of 6 had arranged themselves in a strict manner, Wuming, who was leading the way, and Karna, who was bringing up the rear, were only a few meters away from Godotzi. Therefore, Wuming didn't need to raise his voice or wait until he was close enough. He could just ask directly. Oh, you're talking about this problem. Actually, it's like this. Godotzi smiled and explained to Wuming. After Wuming heard this, he began to have some doubts about luck. That night, Wuming instigated Nightingale to perform an amputation operation on Achilles. Achilles was already fed up with the berserker, so he ran away. Naturally, Nightingale let go of this excellent amputation material and chased after him. The two chased each other on the land southeast of the Missouri River that was not under the influence of Rome and Greece. In this way, Nightingale chased after Achilles for a few days, but in the end, Achilles was more skillful and escaped Nightingale's pursuit. After all, he was a cavalry. Nightingale, on the other hand, could not find her target, so she began to save others along the way. For some reason, ordinary natives, soldiers of the Revolutionary Army, and so on were still wandering. Humans were not to be underestimated. Even in an era where the five forces were divided, humans could survive on their own. The location of Denver was not so much located in the Rocky Mountains, but more accurately, it was located at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. In other words, the terrain was not high. Coincidentally, Nightingale's original location was south of Riverton and north of Denver. In this way, if she walked a little further south, Nightingale would not be far from Denver. Coincidentally, Shutendaji's poison was a pathogen for Nightingale. After feeling the poison blown away by the explosion between Wuming and Ibaraki Duji's noble artifacts, Nightingale came to Denver with her obsession as a berserker. Since most of the poison in Denver had been blown away, Nightingale was able to find people or things that were more poisonous at the moment. And there was no doubt that Shutendaji was that poison. Then, Nightingale came to Gadotzi's side and used her noble artifact to resist Shutendaji's poison. What happened later, Wuming also knew about it. With her obsession as a pathogen, Nightingale, as a berserker, found Gadotzi just like that. Wuming could only smile and say, "That's really, as expected of a berserker." Chapter 520. Wuming's group didn't waste any more time. In just an hour, they arrived at Riverton. This included Karna from the American faction and Tamamonome from the Japanese faction. After all, the two of them were now on the same side, and Wuming didn't think it was a secret that Riverton was a gathering place for followers, so he brought them there. After returning to Riverton, Wuming briefly told Karen and Geronimo about what they had done, including how they were accidentally found by Nightingale, Karna's support, and how Tamamonome had joined Wuming. Of course, when he introduced Tamamonome, he introduced her as a partner. Although Wuming did benefit from Tamamonome, there was no such thing as giving one's body in return for a favor, let alone a man giving his body to a woman. Although Wuming was a bit thick-skinned, he wouldn't do such a shameless thing. Asterisk cough cough asterisk, let's not talk about other things, but with Karna joining us, we are already a lot stronger. After listening to Wuming's explanation, Karna nodded affirmatively. As an existence on the same level as his own disciple, Karna's strength could be said to be the best. Coupled with the memory of the Battle of the 14 Horsemen, Karna was relieved that this once troublesome enemy had become an ally. Sure enough, you also remember the Battle of the Holy Grail. Karna wasn't surprised to see that Karna knew him. Karna didn't think that he was special. Since he could remember the Battle of the 14 Horsemen, then the other followers in the Battle of the 14 Horsemen would certainly remember him. Hearing Karna's words, Karna smiled at Karna to show his friendliness. At this time, Wuming looked around and found that something was wrong. By the way, aren't there some people missing? Wuming looked at the followers in the room. It was obvious that there were some people missing. As for Elizabeth and the others, they ran into a little trouble. It's fine. Gadotzi coughed awkwardly. At this moment, Gadotzi was extremely embarrassed, and Matthew was beside her, looking like he was ready for battle. This made Wuming wonder if Gadotzi had a moral crisis just now. When Wuming told Geronimo and Sharon what happened, Gadotzi was attacked by Kyoheim. After that, Elizabeth, Robin Hood, and Billy Boy threw themselves at Gadotzi and shouted, "Lady Ingen! Lady Ingen!" Kyoheim was taken away, and the scene of Gadotzi being tightly protected by Matthew appeared. As if he had thought of something, Wuming no longer asked about it. Then, he asked about another person. What about Rama? He won't find trouble with Greece. Other than Elizabeth and a few other servants in the team, Wuming found it strange that Romo, the wounded, was not here. After a few days of rest, it was reasonable to say that Rama had almost recovered. Because of this, Rama should be here in such a situation. The only reason why Rama wasn't here was that he had gone to Greece to save his wife. That's right. Although Rama belongs to the ranks of the lone followers, the king is proud and arrogant. From the beginning, he had been searching for Sita alone and did not accept our help. If it weren't for your serious injuries, we wouldn't have met again, Karen explained. And through this lesson, the king has also thought it through. He is no longer alone and has decided to join us, Geronimo added. And then he went alone again. Wu Ming wondered. Wasn't it obvious? Although he decided to go with everyone, in the end, he still went to Greece alone. However, Sharon shook his head. This time, he was not alone. Achilles went with him. In other words, after Achilles got rid of Nightingale, he returned to Riverton. Then, under Rama's strong desire, he listened to his teacher and accompanied Rama to Greece. Spartacus also went with them. Geronimo added and smiled. Wu Ming instantly understood Geronimo's smile and felt a little embarrassed. If Geronimo hadn't mentioned it, Wu Ming would have forgotten about him. Back then, he had used the pseudo-heavenly lock to tie Spartacus up and threw him into the woods. It seemed that Spartacus was finally found by Sharon and the others. As for Wu Ming's pseudo-heavenly lock, it was estimated that its magic power had been exhausted and broken. After all, it had been used for a long time. Without Wu Ming's magic power to replenish it, it was normal for it to break. Anyway, Wu Ming did not feel bad about it. After all, he still had a few pseudo-heavenly locks in his spatial relics. Let's not talk about Spartacus for now. If Achilles went with them, I'm relieved. Wu Ming was relieved. He did not want Rama to be killed again. Although Achilles was easily tied up by Wu Ming's trick, as a demigod hero, Achilles was not to be underestimated. Not only did he have an almost invincible defense like Karna, but he also had many relics. For example, Achilles' shield alone was enough to block the most powerful relics of Karna and Wu Ming, which were comparable to natural disasters. Of course, although it would break after blocking for a while, it was enough for a battle that could end in a few seconds. Since Rama and the others have gone to Greece, let's work on both sides. Whether it was Sharon, Geronimo, Nightingale, or Karna and Tamamonome, they all understood what Wu Ming meant. Are we going to have a final battle? Gadotsi also understood what Wu Ming meant. She was shocked. That's right. Wu Ming decided to end the mutation of this singularity as soon as possible. With the Celtic forces, the American forces, and the lone follower forces joining forces, and the Japanese forces withdrawing, Wu Ming felt that now was the best time to destroy both Greece and Rome. Wu Ming had always felt that the trap set by the Magician King at this singularity was not that simple. He felt that Shutendaji was not the only one who knew Wu Ming's identity and was targeting Wu Ming. The longer this dragged on, the more Wu Ming felt that something was going to happen. Sharon, Geronimo, what do you think? Wu Ming asked the two of them who were acting as the wise ones. I think we should slow down a little. After all, Rama and the others just left yesterday. They should be in Greece now, Geronimo said calmly. However, Sharon expressed a different opinion. I agree with Salander, but I suggest we only attack one of the forces for now. Chapter 521. Immediately afterward, Sharon began to analyze. And as far as we can see, our three-party cooperation can cause an overwhelming force to one of them, but if we deal with both forces at the same time, we will inevitably be suppressed by both sides. After all, although we have a large number of servants, if we deal with both forces at the same time, we will have to split up. Whether it's Greece or Rome, I don't think I'm a pushover, so I think we are likely to suffer losses. Wu Ming nodded. Sharon was right. If Wu Ming was not included, it could be calculated like this. The leader of the Celts, Maeve, had 3 servants, Finn, Dilmaud, and the unknown Indian servant. Needless to say, Maeve and the other Celtic servants were not weak. Although Silent Wonder had never seen the Indian servant before, he knew that the Celts were quite powerful since they were related to Rama. The American forces only had 3 servants. Needless to say, the leader Edison was very weak, and Helena could only be an auxiliary mage. The two's combat power was not high, only Garna was strong, so they did not dare to act rashly. The leader of the lone servant force could be said to be Gadotsi, and there were a lot of servants: Matthew, Achilles, Sharon, Geronimo, Robin Hood, Billy Boy, Kyoheim, Elizabeth, Spartacus, and Rama. As for Tamamo no Mae, she was temporarily assigned to the lone servant force. Although they had the largest number of servants, there were not many who had strong combat power. Strictly speaking, only Achilles, Sharon, and Rama had first-line combat power, and the rest, whether it was Geronimo, Robin Hood, or even Billy Boy, they were not strong. As for Kyoheim and Elizabeth, well, if they were compared to Wuming, Garna, and others, they would be honest mascots. Well, if Kyoheim didn't shout Anjin Sama and Elizabeth didn't sing, they would become very popular. Tamamo no Mae's words were mentioned before. If she was summoned as a berserker or some other job rank, Tamamo no Mae would be able to unleash the terrifying power of one of the 3 great monsters. But now, she was just an ordinary witch fox. Lastly, if Spartacus could release his noble phantasm, he would be a very good troublemaker. However, he would be tied up in a few moves, so he could not be counted on. Moreover, even if he did release a precious artifact, it would be self-destructing, and the price would be too great. Didn't you see that Caligula's berserker, who didn't have any powerful abilities, was stabbed by a noble phantasm? Although it was inappropriate to say so, in the face of a top-level servant like Wuming was certain that no one present, not even Sharon, would be able to survive if they fought with their lives on the line. Although it seemed like Wuming was a little arrogant, unfortunately, this was the truth. Ka Rong is right. Since that's the case, let's split into 2 teams. Wuming decided to eliminate one of the forces first, and then attack the remaining forces. Immediately afterward, Wuming told everyone about his opportunity. They were still divided into 2 teams. The first team was led by Sharon and Geronimo. Robin Hood, Billy Boy, Kyoheim, Elizabeth, plus Edison and Helena, a total of 8 people. Their task was to go to the Roman camp and use all kinds of tricks to distract the Roman forces. The purpose was to delay the Roman forces and have no time to deal with the Greek forces. The Greek forces, on the other hand, were led by Wuming and other powerful servants to form the second team to eliminate them. Wuming returned to Washington first, and then led Maeve, Finn, and Dilmaud to Greece. Karna, on the other hand, was to join Rama, Achilles, and Spartacus to attack the Greek forces together with the Celtic forces brought by Wuming. For now, the Greek forces were much more difficult to deal with than the Roman forces. The Arcadian huntress, the divine magician, and the demigod hero were all stronger than the less mysterious Caesar, Cleopatra, and the others. Because of this, Wuming decided to gather powerful forces to eliminate the Greek forces first, and then attack the Roman forces. When Wuming and the other servants of the second team attacked the Greek forces, Sharon would lead the first team to entangle the Roman forces. Facing the less mysterious Roman forces, Wuming believed that Sharon and the others would not suffer any casualties. After all, they did not have to fight with their lives on the line. They just had to interfere with the Roman forces. That's a good plan. After all, even if we go to Greece with the second team, we won't be able to do much. It's better to go to Rome to interfere. Sharon agreed with the plan. The rest of the servants, Geronimo, Tamamo, and Karna, also had no objections. At this time, Gadotsi spoke. That Matthew and I Gadotsi asked weakly. Matthew also nodded. They could not contact Chaldea at the moment, so Gadotsi and the others could only decide what to do next for the time being. Wuming pondered for a moment, then said. Tachika and Matthew, I originally wanted you to go with Sharon, but as the master, I have to ask for your opinion, so you can choose which team to follow. After hearing Wuming's words, Gadotsi and Matthew looked at each other. But it didn't take long for Gadotsi to speak under Matthew's affirmative gaze. Matthew and I will follow Teacher Ma's team. Then, Gadotsi stated her reason. After all, you have to fight for your life. If Matthew and I go, it may cause trouble for you. After all, Matthew is not good at attacking. Let Matthew and I go to Rome to interfere. Gadotsi said to Wuming with a smile. Although Gadotsi wanted to go with Wuming, she knew that she was a human master, and her servant Matthew was only a defensive type. Following Wuming and the others' attack team would inevitably cause trouble. Therefore, Gadotsi suppressed her desire and chose to go with Sharon and the others to Rome. It's really hard for you, Tachika. It's great that you can think like this. Wuming said as he touched Gadotsi's little head. Although Wuming could also protect Gadotsi, he was always somewhat restrained. Therefore, Wuming was really pleased that Gadotsi could choose to follow Sharon to Rome. It's nothing. I think if the doctor and the director were here, they would let me choose a team. Gadotsi smiled slightly, enjoying Wuming's touch. Retracting his hand, Wuming looked at everyone. Since the task has been assigned, then I will leave first. I will inform Edison to meet you here later. At that time, I will use Edison's communicator to talk to you. Later, Geronimo informed Elizabeth and others of the plan. They naturally had no objection, and they were quite excited. Especially after Kyoheim knew that she and Gadotsi were in the same team. In this way, Wuming and Karna left together, and everyone was preparing for the upcoming battle. Chapter 522. Wuming and Karna left Riverton, but they were not going in the same direction. Karna was heading to the Great Lakes, which was the territory of the Greek forces, to look for Rama and the others. Achilles, Rama, and Spartacus set off during the day. According to Wuming's speculation, even if they were there, it was unlikely that they would rush into the Greek followers recklessly. Maybe they were just observing. After all, after this crisis, Rama also found the problem. Recklessness would not only fail to save his wife, but it would also put him in danger. After all, he was a king. Even if he was more impulsive when he was young, Rama was not ignorant. At present, there had been no movement from the Greek side, so Wuming judged that they had not made a move yet. This was good. Karna could meet up with them first, then lurk and wait for reinforcements. As for Karna's identity, Wuming gave him a runestone, which contained a video recorded by Wuming, which was enough to prove Karna's identity. Besides, Achilles had also teamed up with Karna before, when they were 14 knights, so he knew that Karna would not lie. Therefore, Wuming was not worried about Karna's identity. In this way, Karna headed toward the northeast. Wuming, on the other hand, went south, preparing to use his assassin behavior to pass through the gap between Greece and Rome and return to Celtic. Coincidentally, although it was daytime when Wuming and the others attacked Jiro City, it was almost dark when they arrived at Riverton. The night was suitable for Wuming to sneak away. However, Wuming thought about it carefully and laughed. Not to mention that it would take too long to carefully rush back. Wuming had a portal. Wuming had to rely on himself before because he had never been to those places. Now that he needed to rush back home, wouldn't that be putting the cart before the horse? Therefore, Wuming directly opened the portal and went to Washington. In the president's office in Washington, a black-purple spatial ripple appeared in front of the desk. Then, Wuming walked out of the portal. "You're back." Wuming let out a long sigh of relief, giving off the feeling of a wanderer returning home. However, Wuming chuckled self-deprecatingly. The feeling of home could only be felt in the root. After that, Wuming looked around the empty office. The office gave Wuming the feeling that no one had come here after he left. The books on the table were still the same as when Wuming left. Xiao Sai, you're back. At this moment, the door to the office suddenly opened. The person who called Wuming Little Sai was undoubtedly Maeve. Then, Maeve threw herself into Wuming's arms. I'm sorry, Maeve. I was delayed by something and came back late. Silent Wonder smiled at Maeve. His smile naturally contained an apologetic tone. However, Maeve didn't care. After shaking her head, she broke away from Wuming's embrace. Then, Maeve hugged one of Wuming's arms and said with a smile. It's good that you're back. If there were outsiders here, they would probably be scared to death by Maeve's behavior. Therefore, the cold, arrogant queen who didn't treat men as humans had become so gentle. She was many times gentler than before Wuming left. Even Wuming was shocked. Was it because they hadn't seen each other for a long time that led to the release of mental stress? Ahem. In layman's terms, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Wuming sat on the president's chair without the slightest bit of guilt. The poor president had already died. Wuming hugged Maeve, who was sitting on his lap, and began to tell her about his experience. Maeve, on the other hand, was listening attentively, her big eyes sparkling. In other words, as long as we join forces with the American forces and followers to eradicate Greece and Rome, we will win. Maeve smiled sweetly. Wuming nodded. Then he asked Maeve a little strangely. Maeve, why are you so happy today? Wuming asked. Since she came in, she had been very gentle until now. She was much gentler than the Maeve from a few days ago. Of course, she was still not as gentle as an ordinary girl, but this was not easy for Maeve. You can't expect a queen to be gentle. This was already a very gentle level for Maeve. Facing Wuming's puzzled question, Maeve hugged Wuming's neck and looked at Wuming's face and said happily. Because Sai took off her helmet. When Maeve said this, Wuming realized that he didn't wear his helmet anymore. No one knew when it started, but Wuming had taken off his helmet and maintained the appearance of only wearing white armor. Wuming would only close his helmet during the battle, but once the battle was over, he would take it off again. Although Wuming was used to it, Maeve was not. She had never seen Wuming's true face in this singularity. Of course, it didn't mean that Wuming covered his true face to make Maeve suspicious. After all, no matter who it was, if their lover always covered their face with a mask when they were with their other half, the other half would be very depressed if they couldn't see their lover's face. So, I won't wear a helmet in the future, how about that? Without apologizing, Wuming asked with a smile. With the relationship between the two, there was no need for an apology. Yeah, but no matter what, I like Little Sai. Maeve gently leaned in Wuming's arms and enjoyed this moment of peace. Wuming gently patted Maeve's back and enjoyed a moment of peace with Maeve. Sure enough, Maeve is actually just a little girl who lacks love. After a moment of tenderness, Wuming and Maeve left the office. After all, there was no time to lose. It was better to mobilize the troops and start the final battle. By the way, Sai, that Indian servant left our side. Left? What happened? Although leaving a servant was not a big deal for the current situation, Wuming still wanted to know the inside story. That servant is the hero of India, Achuna. He temporarily joined us on the grounds of following us to find Karna. Soon after he left. Wuming was taken aback. Achuna's mortal enemy was Karna. It seemed that he was still very persistent after death. No wonder he had some relationship with Rama. Rama was the seventh incarnation of Vishnu. Vishnu's sixth incarnation was the axe-wielding Rama, who appeared in the Mahabharata. It had some relationship with Achuna. But more importantly, the axe-wielding Rama was Karna's teacher. Karna's spear was transformed from the axe-wielding Rama's eternal blade. Wuming's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Karna won't meet Achuna halfway, right? Chapter 523. Maeve, gather Finn and the others and head to Chicago. I'll go check on Riverton. I have a feeling that Ajo and Karna have met. When it came to serious matters, Maeve was not ambiguous at all and immediately nodded. Wuming opened a portal and walked in. After Maeve saw Wuming leave, she reverted from a pretty girl to an incomparably domineering queen. She then gave an order to the Wuming guards outside. All troops, head to Chicago. Outside Riverton town, a dark purple teleportation gate appeared. Wuming walked out. Although Wuming was going to Riverton, Wuming chose the place where he and Karna had parted. Wuming looked in the direction Karna had left. Lightning and fire kept appearing in the sky there. Wuming immediately took out his communication device and contacted Edison. Even if Karna and Ajo met, they wouldn't be able to determine the winner in a short time. Hello, this is Thomas Edison. The Lionhead's deep voice came from Wuming's communication device. Listening to Edison's incomparably serious voice, Wuming was amused. Could you imagine a giant lionhead seriously talking on the phone? I'm Siren, President Edison. Wuming then told Edison to attack this place. Wuming also told Edison that Karna was with him. Understood. I'll go to Riverton with Lady Helena immediately with the mechanical infantry, Edison said seriously. Edison said solemnly and then hung up the communication device. Wuming smiled helplessly and put the communication device away. Wuming didn't go back to Riverton. Instead, he ran toward Karna. East of Riverton, in the Missouri River Basin. At this moment, two godlike figures were fighting. Whoosh! 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 Several bolts of lightning shot towards the running Karna from the top of a small hill. Bang! Bang! Karna swung his spear and deflected the lightning arrows. The falling bolts exploded on the ground, creating many craters. Then, Karna condensed mana on his spear and swept it toward the small hill in front of him. Crack! Boom! Like cutting vegetables, the small hill in front of Karna was cut in half and then exploded by the mana contained in it. A dark-skinned figure flew up from the small mound, holding a strange bow in his hands. There was no doubt that the arrow that had attacked Karna was shot by him, and it had to be Ajo. Ajo wasn't worried about losing her cover. In the air, Ajo stood upside down and raised her bow. Karna shot a few more arrows. 5 lightning bolts attracted each other and shot toward Karna in the shape of a pentagram. This time, Karna didn't use his gun to knock away the arrows. Instead, he jumped at the moment the pentagon-shaped arrows were shot at him. Boom! The bolts landed on the ground, and the ground exploded. The strong wind blew Karna's white hair. Karna stood up and looked at Ajo, who had landed on the ground. While Karna was dodging the pentagram arrow, Jona took advantage of the opportunity to flip over and adjust his position before landing steadily on the ground. Karna and Ajo stood opposite each other in the distance, giving off the feeling that they were about to negotiate. But unfortunately, neither Arzu nor Karna had the intention to speak. Ajo raised his bow and shot at Karna crazily with mana bolts. Karna, on the other hand, sprinted toward Ajo, swinging the indestructible blade in his hand to deflect the arrows. From the moment they met, they hadn't said a word and had been fighting the entire time. The surroundings were full of holes from their battle. It was like a natural disaster. That was what Wuming thought when he arrived. Seeing the two fighting again, Wuming sighed. That black guy is Ajo? Wuming asked in surprise. Ajo seemed to have heard him and glanced at Wuming. However, compared to Wuming, Karna seemed to be more attractive to him. Wuming smiled awkwardly. After all, he was caught talking bad about Ajo. However, Wuming didn't expect Ajo to be a black guy. Wuming didn't try to hide his presence. Therefore, not only Ajo, but Karna also noticed Wuming when Wuming arrived. However, because he was fighting with Ajo, Karna didn't greet Wuming. Both of them didn't care about the others around them and only cared about each other. While they were fighting, Wuming shook his head and got rid of the thought that Ajo was a black guy. Then, Wuming stretched out his hand and a holy light spear appeared. Mythical Yggdrasil. Whoosh! Along with the sound of a relic being released, Wuming threw out a small but bright light needle. Karna and Ajo, who were in the middle of their battle, naturally discovered the needle of light. Furthermore, they sensed a considerable threat from it and hurriedly retreated. Poof! The light needle disappeared as soon as it pierced the ground, leaving a small but bottomless hole and a sound when it pierced the ground. Wuming learned this move from the Star Cup's consciousness. By condensing the holy spear, although the attack range was reduced, the power was increased. Otherwise, Karna and Ajo wouldn't have dodged in a hurry. Instead, they would have used their weapons to deflect Wuming's light needle. However, the current result was what Wuming wanted. Wuming didn't want the holy spear to turn into a powerful light cannon. This time, he only used it to interrupt the battle between Karna and Ajo. Wuming dashed forward and came to Karna's side. Although Karna and Ajo had separated, their eyes were still fixed on each other. This made Wuming wonder if there was some unspeakable gay relationship between the two of them. Can't we not fight? Wuming didn't ask anything else and just asked this question. After all, they were about to start a war with the Greek forces. It would be difficult for them to lose a top fighter like Karna. I'm afraid not. Ajo and I are mortal enemies. I don't want to fight, but it seems that Ajo wants to defeat me. I'm afraid I can't help you. After hearing Karna's words, Wuming looked at Ajo. Wuming saw that Ajo's eyes were filled with strong fighting spirit and an incomparably persistent desire. It was obvious that he wouldn't let Karna go. There were only two ways to deal with Ajo. The first was to let Karna and Ajo fight. After all, if Wuming forcibly took Karna away, Ajo would definitely chase after him. Since Ajo could join the Celtic side because of Karna, it wasn't impossible for him to join the Greek side because of Karna. The Greek side would definitely warmly welcome a powerhouse who only wanted to fight Karna. While Wuming was thinking, Ajo was already impatient. What? You want to fight 2 against 1? Even if that's the case, it doesn't matter. Fight me, Karna. Chapter 524. After Ajo finished speaking, she released her magic in a very imposing manner, causing the surrounding ground to crack. At this moment, Wuming finally had a chance to size up Ajo. Although his skin was dark, it revealed an incomparably healthy luster. Dressed in blue and white Indian Brahmin aristocratic clothes, this dark young man was full of character. Plus, he had a cold expression on his face. Wuming believed that ordinary girls in the modern world would definitely be smitten by Ajo. Wuming looked at Karna as if he had suddenly realized something. Was it because Karna was fairer than Ajo that Ajo was so stubborn about fighting him? I feel like you're thinking about something very rude, Karna said indifferently without even looking at Wuming. You're overthinking it, Wuming replied awkwardly. Of course he was joking. Wuming could understand why Ajo was pestering Karna. They were evenly matched, but because the opponent was in a difficult situation, Ajo, who had once sworn that he would not attack the opponent when the opponent was in a difficult situation, made his move. Even though Ajo's guidance was involved, in the end, Ajo still shot the arrow himself. That was the arrow that ended Karna's life, and also the arrow that would make Ajo suffer for the rest of his life. The hero Arjuna had actually wanted to kill his archenemy in a murderous manner. That was too degrading. Although justice always belonged to the victor, Arjuna still felt uneasy. Therefore, after turning into a heroic spirit, his wish was to fight Karna and defeat him with his own strength. Wuming had also thought it through. Let Karna and Arjuna fight. After all, even if Wuming took Karna away, they would still end up fighting in the end. As for killing Arjuna with Karna, Wuming had thought about it before, but first of all, it was inhumane, and second of all, this place was neither close nor far from Chicago. It would cause trouble sooner or later. Then, Wuming opened a portal. After exchanging a few words with Karna, Karna nodded. Then, he glanced at Ajo and walked in. Karna, don't even think about escaping. Arzu roared angrily. Don't worry, Achuna. Karna only left the Missouri River basin. He only went to the northwest of the Cordillera Mountains. After all, there are few people there. You won't be disturbed. Then, Wuming moved the portal and pushed it in front of Ajo. You can find Karna again through this portal. Of course, you can choose not to trust me. The choice is yours. Wuming smiled, indicating that he meant no harm. However, in Ajo's eyes, this smile was extremely evil. He was having a good fight with his opponent, and you sent his opponent running away as soon as you arrived. Now you're even smiling. No matter how you look at it, it's a smile that's asking for a beating. Unfortunately, Wuming's charm wasn't as great as Karna's. Ajo merely looked at Wuming deeply and then entered the portal. Of course, Wuming wouldn't play any tricks. At this moment, Karna and Ajo were indeed in the northwest of the Cordillera Mountains. Then, Wuming took out his communication device and sent a message to Edison. Karna and Ajo are fighting to the death in the northwest of the Cordillera Mountains. You must avoid that place. Pass through Denver from the south and meet up with Chaldea's master in Riverton. After a while, Edison sent back a message. Putting away the communication device, Wuming took Karna's place and continued running toward Chicago. Let the two of them fight it out. By the time the victor is decided, Silent Wonder would have collected all 4 holy grails. The sun set in the west, and night gradually fell. Des Moines, a town on the Mississippi plains that was neither too far nor too close to Chicago. Because of the war, there weren't many people in the town. Also, because the sun had just set, there were only a few passers-by on the road. They all had bitter expressions and frowns. Some of the houses were damaged, and some were directly abandoned. No one cared about them. However, because this place was under the influence of Greece, it was relatively peaceful. Suddenly, a green figure flashed past like a shooting star. This made one of the passers-by wonder if he was hallucinating because of his long-term nervousness, or if he had run into a ghost. Although the sun had just set, it was still considered night. Not wanting to think about it anymore, the passers-by quickened his pace and left. In every abandoned house in Des Moines, a red-haired young man stood in a house without any light, looking out the window from time to time. This person was Rama. Following the appearance of a green figure, Achilles appeared in front of Rama. How is it? Rama asked. I found out. Those people have all gathered in Chicago because of a big hole in their spaceship. They haven't moved yet, Achilles said, rather displeased. Speaking of which, we should just attack them directly. Is there a need to be so cautious? Even Spartacus, who had been trying to attack Rama for some unknown reason, was released by Rama for being a hindrance. Well, actually, Rama just let him go with the flow. It would be best if he could affect the Greek side. After what happened before, I understand that if I want to take back Sido, I won't be able to do it rashly. I might even be killed. Rama closed his eyes and explained to Achilles. This was also the reason why Rama asked Achilles to scout for information. But why didn't he go himself? Achilles was the fastest to run. I deserve to die. However, I can't die. I can't let Sido suffer. I must take back Sido. Before that, I must not die. Rama clenched his fist tightly. The metal gauntlet on his arm made a creaking sound because of Rama's strength. It could be seen how turbulent Rama's heart was. As expected, I still don't know anything about love. Can't we just fight our way through the enemy? Achilles pouted and complained. Even so, Achilles still followed Rama's instructions to scout for information. Sharon had told him that Achilles must listen to Rama's instructions and not charge into the enemy's base alone. As a teacher, Sharon naturally had ways to make his disciple obedient. After all, this was the talent of a teacher. After that, Achilles could only grumble helplessly before following Rama over. If that's the case, then what should we do next? Achilles dug his ears and asked Rama. Attack. Rama paused for a moment and said. Ha! Achilles suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Otherwise, there was something wrong with the young king in front of him. Achilles thought, you must be kidding, brother. Chapter 525. Without paying attention to Achilles' expression, Rama explained the reason. At present, there is no monkey army to help me. The only servants who can fight are you and me. Therefore, attacking is the most reliable method at present. Rama said sadly. When he thought that Sido might have been killed, Rama's heart was full of uneasiness. The young Rama still had the courage to be foolish. After Rama finished speaking, Achilles' forehead showed the word V. Isn't that the same as my previous proposal? Achilles thought with a broken heart. Suddenly, a voice came. I think you'd better wait a little bit. Who is it? Whether it was Achilles or Rama, they took out their weapons and were vigilant. Don't be nervous. Then, accompanied by an optical camouflage illusion, Wu Ming's figure appeared in a corner of the dim room. Wu Ming said that the technology of the Mecha clan was still useful. It's you. Achilles was quite upset, then he put down his meteor lance. The Celtic Saint King. Rama was surprised, but after seeing that it was Wu Ming, he calmed down. After knowing that Wu Ming was also a king, although it was a pirated version, Rama's impression of Wu Ming became very good. Of course, a good impression was a good impression, and the fact that Wu Ming injured him could be forgiven. However, Rama still remembered the crime of negligently allowing his men to imprison Sido. Although they reconciled, they still had to remember the grudge. This was the young king Rama's decision in the face of Sido's matter. Rama, who was like a child throwing a tantrum, was not noble. As long as it concerned Sido, then Rama would not give in. Why did you come here alone? Where is the master of Chaldea? After all, he was also Rama's savior, so Rama naturally cared about him. Don't worry, Edison has agreed to join forces with us. On the way back, we have joined forces with Karna to eliminate the Shitendaji who had gathered in Japan. Then, Wu Ming briefly explained to the two of them why Karna was a member of the United States, what they had been doing during this period of time, and their next plan. I didn't expect Lancer to join Edison's camp. Life is really unpredictable. Achilles sighed. In the previous memory, they were clearly teammates, but in the end, they became enemies again. But in any case, because of the alliance, they became teammates again. That person is a hero who gave alms. It's not strange for him to have such decisiveness, Rama said calmly. Although he and Karna did not come from the same story, Rama knew quite a bit about the hero who gave alms. But I didn't expect the heaven-bestowed hero Aozhou to appear at this singularity. Rama shook his head. Because of Wu Ming's explanation, the two also knew that Aozhou had been fighting Karna all this time. They both sighed with emotion. Not only did Rama temporarily lose a combat power, but he also sighed that these two old enemies who loved and hated each other could appear at this singularity at the same time. That's why this is the Holy Grail. Such a miracle can also happen. Achilles smiled softly, thinking about how he and Sensei appeared together. After hearing Achilles' words, Wuming smiled. Because of this, Rama, you can also meet Sito at this singularity, just like Karna and Ajo. These were all miracles brought about by the Holy Grail. Rama did not deny it at all and nodded seriously. Although I still can't meet Sito, as long as I know that she's still on this continent, I feel extremely at ease. Because Rama intervened in the Battle of the Monkeys and killed the enemy monkey, the dead monkey's wife put a curse on him. Even if you take back your wife, you can't really meet her. Because of this parting curse, Rama and Sito were separated again in the end, and it was a separation of life and death. This curse still accompanied the two. As long as they were too close to each other, one of them would gradually become weak, faint, and lose power until one of them left. Even if there's a curse, I will definitely find Sito. Rama said angrily. Even with such a curse, Rama still pursued Sito without hesitation, even if it meant death. If that's the case, then you should listen to me and wait for a while. During Wuming's explanation, he also told the two of them about the joint attack of the American forces, the Lone Follower forces, and the Celtic forces on the remaining two forces. If that's the case, I can wait. Anyway, I've been waiting for a day. Rama put away the eternal blade and sat cross-legged on the ground. Tisk, really, both of them are so difficult to understand. Achilles complained as he walked to another room. Wuming smiled helplessly, although he asked Ramodi. By the way, why didn't I see Spartacus? Wuming found Rama and Achilles through mana perception, but Wuming didn't find Spartacus' mana in the surroundings. Could it be that he was already killed? Wuming thought mischievously. That traitor, I have already banished him. Rama answered Wuming rather unhappily. Banished? Could it be that Spartacus was attracted by the king follower and attacked Rama, but was then driven away by Rama? Wuming looked at Rama's rather unhappy expression and thought that it must be so. Forget it, I'll go find him. I don't want him to ruin my plan. After that, Rama and Achilles continued to stay in Des Moines, while Wuming left and embarked on the path to find the traitor. Although Spartacus' dexterity was D, even so, he was much faster than ordinary people. Therefore, he must hurry up and find him. If he was discovered or even captured by the Greek forces. Although it wouldn't cause a big impact, he was afraid that he would be used against Wuming and the others. First of all, Wuming looked for traces of Spartacus near Chicago. Of course, Wuming activated the Triumph armor and the assassin mode, so it wasn't easy to find him. Then he found some traces of Spartacus. Could it be that he was really captured? Wuming said helplessly. At this time, Wuming suddenly found another mana, which was the mana of someone Wuming had seen before. Does this mean that he wants me to go there? Wuming felt that the other party didn't have the slightest trace of concealment. He speculated that the other party was trying to attract him. Not afraid that it was a trap, Wuming quietly moved toward that place. Chapter 526. In just a few seconds, Wuming came to a small high ground where a girl with beast ears holding a bow stood there. She seemed to be admiring the moon. After Wuming saw the girl with beast ears, he also let go of the unnecessary vigilance in his heart, lifted the magic version of optical camouflage, and slowly walked out of the shadows. Since it's you, I don't think this is a trap, Atlanta. After Wuming finished speaking, the girl with beast ears turned around. This person was the famous huntress of Greece, Atlanta. You really believe me? You know I'm a huntress, Saber. Without looking back, Atlanta just closed her eyes and said in a flat tone. Since you call me Saber, then you must have the memory of the Battle of the 14 Horsemen. I don't think you will repay kindness with ingratitude. Wu Ming chuckled. Indeed, the only saber that Wu Ming had ever served as was Sodric during the Battle of the 14 Horsemen, which also showed that Atlanta had that memory. And because Wu Ming freed Black Assassin Jack the Ripper, Atlanta owed Wu Ming a favor. It could be said that when the Argo encountered Wu Ming before, Atlanta pretended not to know Wu Ming and did not expose Wu Ming's information, which was considered as returning the favor. However, it did not mean that there was no friendship between the two after the favor was returned. And now, Atlanta contacted Wu Ming, which was the embodiment of this friendship. If you call me over like this, won't it attract Ison's attention? Although I don't know him, I don't think that guy is very generous. Wu Ming walked to Atlanta's side and looked at the moon side by side. Although Ison is indeed a useless guy, it is because of this that he will trust me completely and send me out to search the surroundings alone. However, it was also because Atlanta was suitable for investigation that Ison sent her here. So, in other words, Spartacus was really caught by you. Otherwise, why would he send Atlanta to scout for no reason? Wu Ming really didn't know Ison, but through historical records, in Wu Ming's opinion, with Ison's timid temperament, he should keep all his combat power by his side. Unless there was a special situation. And Wu Ming didn't think that Atlanta was sent by Ison. It was Demetrius who spoke to Ison, so Ison sent me out. Sure enough. Wu Ming nodded and then continued to ask. So, tell me the specific information about the Greek side. Immediately afterward, Atlanta briefly told Wu Ming about the servants on the Greek side. The leader of the Greek side, or rather, the person who obtained the Holy Grail, was Ison. Therefore, the search Argo was Ison's precious artifact. The other servants on the Greek side were Archer Atlanta, Caster Medea, Berserker Hercules, Lancer Hector, and the captive archer Xido. That guy seemed to have told Ison that as long as he defeated the other forces and seized all 4 Holy Grails, he would be able to establish a country on this land that was separate from human history and would not be burned down by reason. Then, like a fanatic, Ison began to fight for hegemony, Atlanta said with a disdainful look on her face. He didn't know if she was mocking the Magic King or mocking Ison for believing the Magic King who had cheated him so easily. I really don't know what Ison is thinking. Back at the second singularity, he was already tricked by the Magus King. Even though it was with the help of Demetrius. Wu Ming didn't know about this, and Atlanta didn't care whether Ison was deceived or not, so they stopped talking about this topic. Well, I have understood the specific situation. So, why did you capture Xido? How could you threaten Rama with this? Isn't it a bit ridiculous? Rama might be controlled by others, but it was impossible for him to completely surrender to Ison. Moreover, Xido could take the initiative to die for the people when Rama was old. Perhaps when Ison threatened Rama with this, Xido would choose to commit suicide. In short, it was impossible. That guy did have such an idea. Atlanta said helplessly and disdainfully. Oh, I overestimated Ison. Wu Ming also smiled, but his smile was quite sarcastic. However, you can completely leave Ison's side. Why did you choose to stay? After all, there were not only Greek forces on the mainland. Wu Ming did not think that Atlanta would stubbornly follow Ison's side. Atlanta was not a good person, but in the face of righteousness, she would not choose to follow Ison's side. Indeed, when I was in Oceanos, I left Ison's Argo, but this time is slightly different. Atlanta shook her head. As a person who once participated in the Argo, when I was summoned by Ison using the Holy Grail, I was bound to his Argo. I can't leave this side. To put it simply, there was a master who didn't have a command seal. But this is not the whole reason. The main point is that Ison has a way to summon the demon god pillar. Wu Ming frowned. Shutendaji, who held the Holy Grail, also summoned the demon god pillar. Could it be that servants with the Holy Grail could summon the demon god pillar? Then, could Maeve, who held the original Holy Grail of this singularity, also be able to, using the Holy Grail, you can use a servant's spiritual base to summon a demon god pillar, but the summoned demon god pillar is more like a possession than a summon. Atlanta continued. Possession. That is to say, the demon god pillar needs to devour a servant to be able to descend. Wuming remembered the Judge Haim who appeared when he defeated the demon god Shutendaji. He was afraid that the other party used the Judge Haim's spiritual base to summon the demon god pillar. Wuming's guess was right. Shutendaji used the unconscious Judge Haim as a medium to summon the demon god pillar. Because he used the Judge Haim's spiritual base, Shutendaji did not lose consciousness. She used the Holy Grail to split her consciousness in advance, and with the death of the main body as a trigger medium, she used the Judge Haim to summon the demon god pillar, and then fused a trace of consciousness in the Holy Grail with the demon god pillar. This was also the reason why the demon god Shutendaji made the sound of the demon god pillar and Shutendaji. Then, Aisin captured Sito. This is also the reason why Aisin captured Sito. If Sito can't make Roromo submit, then it means that he is useless. Naturally, he can use Sito to summon the demon god pillar. Atlanta's eyes were evil, as if she was ashamed to be in the same force as Aisin. This is the most important reason why I didn't break away from the Greek forces. Chapter 527. Compared to breaking away from Greece, isn't it more suitable for you to lurk as an undercover agent? Wuming said for Atlanta. Atlanta nodded and then continued. Because I don't know how to be an undercover agent, I can be regarded as working for Aisin wholeheartedly during this time, whether it's capturing Sito or obeying orders to kill other servants. That was also the reason why Atlanta did not hesitate to place a noble phantasm on Wuming. Since the Argo was destroyed by your shot, Aisin has been keeping the Argo in Chicago for the past few days and embedded the Holy Grail in it. With Demetrius' help, the Argo has become a grade A+ noble phantasm. It's more than enough to withstand the attack of a great and noble phantasm. Wuming smiled when he heard this. He was afraid that Aisin was frightened by Wuming's shot, so he installed the Holy Grail directly on the Argo. However, because the Holy Grail was transferred from Chicago to the Argo, the Dragonteeth soldiers could not be automatically mass-produced. These days, the Dragonteeth soldiers were made by Demetrius herself. Not only the quality but also the quantity has decreased a lot. In several battles with Rome, we can be said to be at a disadvantage. Wuming suddenly realized that the Holy Grail still had a lot of drawbacks. It could not mass-produce soldiers on the Argo. But because of this, Aisin let me, Hector, and Hercules go to the battlefield together. We killed Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. At present, there are not many Roman servants left. Hearing this, Wuming's eyes lit up. This can be regarded as reducing the burden on us. Immediately afterward, Wuming told Atlanta about their plan to unite the three parties. I didn't expect you to be able to do this. Atlanta looked at Wuming deeply. Becoming the king of the Celts, destroying the Japanese forces, joining the American forces, and attacking Greece and Rome with the lone servant forces led by Master Chaldea. This really shocked Atlanta. If everything goes well, I'm afraid this singularity will be the fastest to solve among these singularities, Atlanta said thoughtfully. Atlanta herself had appeared at the second singularity before, so she naturally knew how quickly Godotzi had saved the singularity. Based on this, he speculated that the other singularities should be similar. Indeed. Counting from the time Li Xiang and the others entered this singularity, I'm afraid it hasn't even been a week. Although Wuming did not know how long it took Godotzi to solve the previous singularities, Roman had told Wuming that it had been more than half a year since the anthropogenic fever. In other words, on average, it would take more than a month and a half to deal with a singularity. If all went well, Godotzi would be able to resolve the singularity in less than a week. That was quite fast. While Wuming was thinking, Atalanta paused and spoke. By the way, is it okay to tell me about your chances? Atalanta meant nothing more than, in case I'm a spy and deceived you, or accidentally leak your information. However, Wuming chuckled and shook his head. It doesn't matter even if you are exposed. After all, our plan is considered an open conspiracy. Gadotzi and the others' first team went to Rome. They did not expect to eradicate Rome, but it was enough to hold them back. Wuming and the others' second team would attack the Greek forces head-on. Before the attack, the Greek side would definitely notice something, so it did not matter if they were exposed or not. What's more, I don't think Atalanta is that kind of person. I believe that Atalanta, who loves children, no matter how her appearance changes, her inner heart is incomparably beautiful. With that said, Wuming reached out and touched Atalanta's beast ears. Because the distance was too close, Atalanta did not dodge and was caught by Wuming. Ha, ha. Atalanta was shocked and quickly jumped away. What are you doing, you rude guy? Atalanta blushed, hugged her beast ears, and stammered. Sorry, I've been interested in your beast ears for a long time. It was just a spur of the moment. Wuming apologized with a smile, but the hand that was still floating in the air showed that Wuming was still thinking about the touch of Atalanta's beast ears. Atalanta blushed, gritted her teeth, and gripped the sky bow fiercely. Ahem, I have one more thing to ask of you. Wuming coughed and became serious. And it seemed that because Wuming had left a good impression on Atalanta, such as simple teasing was not enough to completely collapse the image built in Atalanta's heart. Atalanta touched the beast ears on her head, calmed her face, and nodded. But it was still very popular. Immediately afterward, Wuming made 2 runestones on the spot in front of Atalanta, but the runes on the runestones did not look like Lune runes. Immediately afterward, Wuming handed the 2 runestones to Atalanta. Hide these 2 runestones close to your body. Don't let Demetrius, the god magician, find them. After all, Konigami magicians weren't the same as those weak magicians of modern times. Seeing Wuming's solemn face, she quickly took it and nodded solemnly. Then, because of the physical contact when she took the runestones, Atalanta blushed again. Even the night could not cover it. After all, there was moonlight. And with the pretentious serious expression, Atalanta was very cute at the moment. However, Wuming also knew that it was business, so he did not tease Atalanta anymore. When Ison wants to use the Holy Grail to summon the demon god pillar, just pour your mana into these 2 runic stones. If possible, the closer you are to the Holy Grail, the better. Of course, I won't force you. Wuming instructed in a joking manner. I know. If there is nothing else, I will leave first. After Wuming nodded, Atalanta took 2 steps, but for some reason, she stopped again. By the way, Demetrius may have become the master of Spartacus. You know his noble phantasm. That self-explosion is not a joke. After all, Wuming and Atalanta both had memories of the battle between the 14 knights. Naturally, they remembered the power of Spartacus' noble phantasm during the battle between the 14 knights. Are you concerned about me? Why don't you let me touch your beast ears again? Wuming smiled mischievously. Atalanta's face turned red in an instant, and she quickly left here. After Atalanta left, Wuming's mischievous smile disappeared. Looking at the gradually rising moon, Wuming always felt uneasy. At this time, Wuming found that something was wrong. The sky is not normal. Chapter 528. People said that waiting was the longest, but it was not the case for the servants. After putting away the communication device with Edison, Wuming went to the window and looked at the moon. At that moment, the moon had reached the western sky. It should be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Edison told me that they have met up with Tachika and the others and set off for Rome. Wu Ming said to the shadow behind him. Rama and Achilles came out from the shadow. Finally, it's going to start fighting. It's very uncomfortable to be here all the time. Achilles bit the bristlegrass that he found from God knows where. I'm just as upset as you are. As long as I think about fighting side by side with the cultic servants, my heart is extremely irritated. Rama put one hand on the eternal blade on his waist, and the other hand clenched his fist. Wu Ming knew what Rama meant. The enemy who imprisoned his wife was now going to rescue his wife with the enemy. Rama's heart must be quite restless. After all, Rama and Wu Ming had reconciled, but he did not reconcile with the other cultic servants. It could be said that if it were not for Wu Ming's repeated advice and a hint of pleading, Rama, the childish king, would definitely not agree. This time, I'm giving you face. Remember this, humph. Rama snorted and turned his head. I think you're doing this for the sake of saving your wife. Of course, that sentence could only be thought. Wu Ming did not dare to say it out loud. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble this young king would cause? So, when will the cultic servants arrive here? Achilles asked. Wu Ming smiled slightly. They have arrived. The moon was covered by clouds, and the earth fell into darkness. On the eastern plains outside Chicago, a large shadow moved toward Chicago with the help of the darkness. Atlantis stood on the city wall, her eyes focused. Even the moonless night could not cover the sharp eyes of the huntress. Celtic people. Atlantis said softly as if deep in thought. She then jumped, left the city wall, and returned to the city of Chicago. Without a doubt, she had gone to inform Ison. It's time for me to come out. Defending the city is my specialty. After Atlanta left, a middle-aged man carrying a javelin that was much longer than an ordinary javelin walked to the city wall. Gradually, a gust of wind blew, and the dark clouds in the sky that were blocking the moon were blown away. The moonlight illuminated the land. Countless soldiers with the same face advanced towards the city of Chicago in an orderly manner. Even Hector couldn't tell how many soldiers they had. The only two things that stood out from the rest were the three servants with weapons in their hands at the front of the army and the luxurious ox cart pulled by two divine bulls in the middle of the army. I didn't expect Queen Maeve to personally come to the battlefield. Hector scratched the back of his head, seemingly feeling helpless about the situation. Even though Greece had always been at war with Rome, it did not mean that they had never fought with the Celts. In fact, what Wu Ming didn't know was that whether it was the Celts, Greeks, or Romans, they had killed or injured each other. However, because it was only a battle between a single servant, the information was not circulated. Of course, from a general point of view, some information that was not so secret was still known. For example, the leader of the Celts was Maeve, because she never deliberately hid herself and even publicized it. Therefore, Hector concluded that Maeve must be sitting in the luxurious ox cart. For a woman like Maeve who thought highly of herself, it was natural for her to do such a thing. Of course, Hector didn't know Wu Ming's information. Not to mention that Wu Ming was summoned less than a week ago, Maeve didn't deliberately publicize it. Of course, this was Wu Ming's idea. Then those two spearmen must be Celtic warriors. How valiant. They didn't let a single dragon fangs go and quickly ambushed here. I wouldn't do something like that. Hector smiled bitterly as he spoke faintly. Just like what Hector said, Greece's territory was full of dragon fang soldiers, and the Celts were able to sneak into Chicago in the middle of the night without being discovered. This was undoubtedly due to the help of the servants. I really hope it's as simple as defending the city. Uncle is very clumsy about other things. After sighing, Hector began to command the Dragon Fang soldiers to prepare for the enemy's attack. Not far from Chicago, Finn waved his hand, and the entire army stopped in place as if they had received an order. This was the privilege of the Holy Grail's generals. Now, the enemy must have discovered us. The next command will be handed over to the Queen, Dilmund. Finn said lightly. Yes, my lord, I will go and greet the Queen. Dilmund bowed to Finn and then walked to the rear. Just as Dilmund said, he was ready to welcome the Queen's carriage. To be able to let the army arrive here without being discovered, your wisdom is really terrifying. Next, it's time to show my bravery. Fergus grinned. Finn had a good impression of this big guy. Well, after all, they were both Celts. Then I'll have to trouble the magic sword envoy to take the lead. In just a moment, the ox cart came from the center of the army to the front line. Ah, we're here already, Finn. Good job. A noblewoman's voice came from the carriage pulled by the divine ox. Our army has arrived in Chicago, and the enemy has discovered us. So, when will His Royal Highness the Holy King appear? Finn asked politely. Your Holy King is on the other side of the city. I can feel it. In the carriage, Maeve took off her white silk gloves and looked at the bright red dragon-like pattern on the back of her hand formed by 3 command seals and smiled. Then, let's have Fergus break the city gate. No problem, right? Maeve said to Fergus outside the carriage. Of course, no problem. How can a Celtic man say no? After saying that, Fergus walked forward with the magic sword spiral sword on his shoulder. After the Holy Grail's treatment, Fergus had completely recovered, and now he was full of energy. On the city wall, Hector looked at the man walking forward with the magic sword. He had already guessed what he was going to do. He's going to attack the city with a noble artifact. What a headache. Then, when Hector noticed that Fergus' noble artifact was getting brighter and the magic power was getting thicker, Hector retreated. Uncle, you can't stop it. This is already a noble artifact that's comparable to a city's noble artifact. Let's escape first. Then, a rainbow-colored light exploded after Hector left the city wall. Chapter 529. Alright, I feel like I'm full of energy today. I'm sure you'll be satisfied with this shot. Fergus raised his neon sword and laughed. One had to know that the A and plus and A plus were not eye-catching individually, but when they were combined, it was no joke. Then hurry up. If it wasn't for your relic, I would have asked you to leave earlier. Maeve's impatient voice came from the carriage. Naturally, by leaving the stage, he meant that he had died. Also, although I don't mind you taking advantage of me verbally, I would be happy to see little Sai kill you. Oh, my apologies, Your Majesty. Don't worry, I'm sure His Majesty will be satisfied with this shot. I hope so. Maeve's lazy voice sounded. The neon sword in Fergus's hand began to glow. Fergus stabbed the neon sword into the ground. Caladbolg. In an instant, a rainbow-colored light extended from the neon sword to the city walls of Chicago. Boom! In an instant, a rainbow light burst out of the ground and blasted the city walls of Chicago. Countless Dragonfang soldiers were directly destroyed and turned into dust. Those Dragonfang soldiers that were lucky enough not to be turned into dust were also scattered into small pieces of bone. Ahahaha. This is truly spectacular. Fergus laughed heartily as he raised the rainbow sword. It had to be said that Fergus was really full of energy. After releasing the relic that doubled his power, he was still in high spirits. Finn and Dilmund watched this scene calmly. After all, this scene was nothing to them. Maeve, who was sitting in her beloved chariot, nodded in satisfaction. Then, she gave an order. Everyone, attack. At this moment, an irrational roar was heard. Asterisk 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 asterisk. On the west side of Chicago, which was the opposite side of Maeve's army, Wuming, Rama, and Achilles arrived. When the three of them arrived, they saw the explosion on the east side of Chicago. "That's the demonic sword envoy's precious artifact," Rama said. "The person who understands a person the best is not his friend, but his opponent." Back then, Rama had fought Fergus to the death for the sake of Cedo. Naturally, he knew about Fergus' noble artifact. That should be the case. Fergus' noble artifact was still vivid in Rama's mind. "To be honest, I originally wanted to end that guy directly." At this moment, Wuming spoke. Both Rama and Achilles looked over. "If there are no restrictions, he will do as he pleases. For a king, this kind of teammate is very annoying." Wuming smiled coldly. At this moment, Rama and Achilles finally felt the pressure brought about by Wuming. No matter how kind this guy was, he was still a berserker. No matter how close he was to the people, he was still a king. All in all, Wuming was not a kind man. He would not hesitate to do things that would bring him enough benefits. However, Wuming still had his own bottom line. As the origin dragon, Wuming would definitely become 10,000 times more noble than Gaia Alea in the future. He was destined to never be the same as an ordinary person, which was why he treated everything with reason. That was why people often said that the heavens were heartless. Moreover, have you ever seen Wuming hesitate or worry when he killed someone? Although it was a pity, why would a human feel sad when he crushed an ant to death? That was the reality. Take Nazalik for example. The people in it were all demons. If it was not for Wuming deliberately suppressing them, they would have been destroyed. However, Wuming would still not do anything to them. Firstly, they were Wuming's subordinates. Wuming had mistakenly entered and became the supreme king. Therefore, he had to be responsible. Secondly, if there was good, there would be evil. Wuming would not purposely punish the evil. Cough cough. However, if they provoked Wuming, Wuming would not mind getting rid of the weeds. Just like Darius who wanted to capture Mayu. Other than that, Wuming was more fond of humans. Because Wuming was just adopted by humans, he was a human for a period of time. Therefore, he was more fond of humans. Especially those who were considered good by Wuming. If he had the ability, Wuming would definitely help. Rick was a good example. Wuming specially went to Rick's world and helped the humans to turn the situation around. If possible, Wuming still liked to stay with humans. Because the possibilities and emotions of humans made Wuming very happy. And Wuming wanted to kill Fergus. Well, regarding this point, Wuming only wanted to kill Fergus because he had flirted with Maeve before. But no matter what, he is still my subordinate. It is better to keep him alive. Just like that, the topic ended. Let's go. Maeve has already started. We can't fall behind. Saying that, the three of them walked towards the west wall of Chicago. Wuming started to move. On Maeve's side, there was a small problem. Hercules let out a confused roar as he swung his axe and sword at Fergus. Bang! The ground that was hit by Hercules cracked. As for Fergus, he naturally dodged this attack. Hey, why are you attacking me directly? You think too highly of me. Although Fergus was still running his mouth, his expression had become serious. Fergus was also holding the neon sword with both hands. Dilmond, be careful. This big guy is not to be trifled with. Finn held his spear and looked warily at Hercules, who had pulled out his axe and sword from the ground. Yes. My lord. Dilmond also raised his red and yellow spears and stood beside Finn. My brave warriors. Maeve didn't even walk out of the carriage. With just one sentence, countless Wuming-faced soldiers rushed towards Hercules. However, even if they were strengthened by the Holy Grail, the small fries were still small fries. For a great hero like Hercules, they were basically useless. Hercules roared at the sky. Even if he didn't have magic to release this skill, the roar mixed with magic alone was enough to shock the nearby soldiers to death. Then, Hercules rushed into the crowd of soldiers and began a massacre. At this moment, Hercules could only be described with 4 words. Unparalleled mowing. Ha! Accompanied by a roar, a drill-like spiral sword attacked Hercules from behind. Clang! Hercules easily blocked Fergus' attack with his axe and sword and slapped Fergus away. With the mind's eye skill, Hercules naturally wouldn't be ambushed successfully. This is a little tricky. Fergus stabilized himself as he flew away and broke out in cold sweat. When Fergus was sent flying, Finn and Dilmund also rushed forward. With the 2 of them together and their flexibility as spearmen, they could slightly restrain Hercules. However, they still couldn't cause much damage to Hercules. Let's release the noble artifact again. With that, Fergus raised his magic sword. However, at this moment, a rather deranged voice was heard. Ahahaha, oppressor! Oppressor! Chapter 530. In the west of Chicago, because Maeve was attracting attention in the east of Chicago, Wooming's side was relatively smooth. Achilles stopped his chariot, and the 3 immortal horses that pulled the chariot snorted. On the city wall, there was no one, all of them were Dragon Fang soldiers. Now, these Dragon Fang soldiers had all fallen to the ground and turned into ashes. Even my chariot can't stop them. Sure enough, the small fries are not interesting. There was no doubt that these were all done by Achilles, who had just stopped the chariot. Besides, Achilles also descended as a rider. Achilles' chariot was still too strong for these Dragon Fang soldiers, or rather, the Dragon Fang soldiers were too weak. What's more, these Dragon Fang soldiers were likely to be made by Demetrius, not the enhanced version of the Dragon Fang soldiers mass-produced by the Holy Grail. Immediately afterward, Wooming and Rama got off the chariot. The 2 finally experienced the thrill of racing an ancient chariot. At this time, an arrow emitting turquoise magic power shot over. Bang! Rama held the indestructible blade and deflected the arrow with A-level strength. The 3 of them looked at the roof of the house not far away, and Atalanta was aiming her bow here. That is... Big sister. Achilles' expression darkened. After all, when he was in the 14th Rider, he had a good relationship with Atalanta, and Achilles didn't really want to attack Atalanta. Oh, really, why are there so many people tonight? I don't have the energy to entertain you all. A voice that was more boring than Roman came. Hector, carrying his long javelin, appeared from the shadows of the city. Hector. This was Achilles' second surprise after Atalanta. He didn't expect it to be someone related to him. In the famous Trojan War, Hector's defense was invincible, and the enemy was defeated. The Trojan side was not far from victory. After that, Achilles went to the battlefield to fight Hector one-on-one. Although Hector broke his immortality, Hector still lost. As a result, the Trojan side gradually lost. It could be said that if there was no Achilles, Hector would not die, and he would not fall into the Trojan horse trap, and the Trojan side would probably win. But there were no ifs, and now, the 2 old rivals of the Trojan War were reunited here. Aw, isn't this Achilles? I didn't think that we would become enemies again. Sure enough, the Holy Grail is really a magical thing. Hector didn't think that he would be able to see Achilles, and he was also shocked. I'll deal with this guy. Achilles said to Wooming and Rama Rider, riding on his meteor chariot. Said chariot, but said chariot, 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 he said chariot, and said he said Although of said. Although Hector did not think that Atlanta could defeat the remaining two servants, he did not think that she would be able to defeat them. In Hector's opinion, the remaining two servants were not weaker than Achilles. However, Archer Atlanta just nodded indifferently and did not say anything. After Hector left, Rama pointed the undying blade at Atlanta. Then, let me deal with this archer, Romo said confidently. Wuming knew that after the mana crystal healed Rama, a huge amount of mana was still stored in Rama's body. Just like how Fergus had an excess of energy after being healed by the Holy Grail, Rama was the same now. Then, under Rama's eager expression, Atlanta put down the bow. Sarant, Ison is preparing to escape. Then, two gasps of surprise came from Wuming and Romo. Ha! Sigh. The southern city of the Missouri River Valley, Alexandria, camp of the Roman forces. Romulus looked at the Roman soldiers who were fighting against the incoming mechanical troops with a serious face and did not say anything. Lord God. A blonde girl in a white wedding dress walked to Romulus' side. It seems that the masters of Chaldea have joined forces with the native forces of the United States. Very good, in this way, Rome, will be protected. Romulus nodded and said excitedly. However, Nero did not understand what his god was talking about. My sons, Caesar, Caligula, have left. Now, all of our servants, Rome, have left. Romulus said to the pure bride. Who asked Rome to summon emperors this time? How mysterious would the emperors be? It was expected that they would leave. I will protect Rome until I die. The girl said to the god ancestor in a tone of farewell. My son, if I, Rome, also leave, then destroy the Holy Grail. Romulus said. But, God, isn't that the existence that is suppressing her? If we destroy the Holy Grail, won't she be released? The girl said worriedly. Compared to becoming the demon god pillar, Rome, think that we should choose to release her. As he said that, Romulus put his hand on the girl's head. If Rome, is gone, there is no need to stop her. Moreover, she is also on our side, my son Nero. I understand, Lord God. Then, they realized that instead of attacking, the mechanical troops seemed to be trapping them here. It seems that something we don't know has happened, my son. My son, welcome them in. In the west of Chicago, the battle between Achilles and Hector caused a lot of magic to explode. It was as bright as the light in the night. However, Wuming and Romulus did not pay attention to that. In short, that archer is actually on our side. Romulus looked at Atlanta who left and asked Wuming rather unhappily. He wanted to fight for a long time. In the end, he finally met an enemy that he thought he could fight, but it turned out to be a spy on his side. In short, it's a good thing to subdue the enemy without fighting. Wuming smiled and patted Romulus on the shoulder, indicating that he was more open-minded. Of course, I understand that. Romulus said unhappily. Then, next, we need to wait, right? Wuming walked to the edge of the city wall and said jokingly. We can also watch Achilles fight Hector to relieve our boredom. Wuming showed a mischievous smile. Romulus was speechless. Chapter 531. Ahahaha. Oppressor. Spartacus laughed wildly and used his seemingly ordinary iron sword to madly charge into the crowd of soldiers. At this moment, Maeve had already retreated to the back of the soldiers, or it should be said that the soldiers were constantly moving forward. Maeve, who hadn't moved, fell behind the soldiers. If one paid close attention, they would discover that Spartacus was advancing towards Maeve. If Wuming was here, it wouldn't be strange. After all, Spartacus liked to attack the so-called oppressors that he spoke of the most. In other words, it was normal for him to attack Maeve. "I can't let you pass, Berserker." At this moment, a tall man with a spiral sword stood in front of Spartacus. It was Fergus, who had been sent flying by Hercules. Because Finn and Dilmund had gone to restrain Hercules, Fergus was the only one facing this mad dog. Why didn't Maeve make a move? If the Emperor had to make a move, then what was the use of a general? "Are you also an oppressor?" "Ahahaha, oppressor, give me more oppression." Spartacus laughed loudly, no longer caring about the other soldiers, and charged towards Fergus. Although it was very short, Fergus had been a king before, so it wasn't strange that he could attract Fergus' attention. Clank! The magic sword and the ordinary iron sword collided, producing an ear-piercing sound. It was hard to imagine that Spartacus's ordinary iron sword could not break after colliding with the magic sword. Ahahaha! Ahahaha! Spartacus was like a mad dog as he punched Fergus without any pattern. Fergus was a Celtic warrior, a member of the Red Branch Knights, and also wielded a magic sword. Naturally, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage in a fight against the leader of the rebels, Spartacus. If one only looked at his appearance, Spartacus was about to be killed by Fergus. However, Fergus discovered that even if Spartacus' body was seriously injured, this berserker was getting more spirited as he fought. No, it should be said that, the more injured he gets, the more spirited he gets. TSK, I hate this kind of guy with super high durability. Fergus was rather unhappy. Spartacus' body was already injured. His right arm was almost detached from his body, and there was a big hole in his abdomen and heart by the neon sword. There were many half-meter-long wounds on his body, and even half of his head was smashed in. The wounds on Spartacus' head and heart were the wounds. When Fergus saw that Spartacus was getting more spirited, he directly attacked these two places. However, Fergus didn't affect Spartacus. Fergus even noticed that Spartacus's wounds were healing, and Spartacus mutated. Spartacus, whose body had begun to change, gradually blocked Fergus' attacks and began to counterattack. Berserker, can't be killed, Fergus was. Fergus took a few steps back and was ready to use his noble relic to kill Berserker in one go. Ahahahahaha. Ahahahaha. Oppressor. Come. Give me even more pressure. However, Spartacus didn't give Fergus a chance. He was really like a mad dog, entangling with Fergus. In the face of a berserker like Spartacus, who had so many crazy skills, pure magic and physical attacks were basically useless against Spartacus. This was all thanks to Spartacus' noble phantasm and skills. The glory of being abused. B+ when the magician healed Spartacus, the amount of magic consumed was a quarter of the original amount. The more serious the attack, the more spirited Spartacus was until he brought out all his hidden strength. After a certain period of time, the injuries would be gradually healed. Unyielding will, no matter what kind of pain and despair he faced, he would not give in. An extremely strong will could obtain physical and mental endurance. Roar of the defective beast, crying warmonger. A part of the damage received from the enemy can be converted into magic and stored in the body. The efficiency of the conversion of magic will increase as Spartacus' physical strength decreases. The magic accumulated in the body can be used to enhance Spartacus' ability. It could be said that Spartacus was on the same level as Hercules in terms of tenacity. Of course, it was only in terms of tenacity. Currently, there were only two ways to deal with Spartacus. The first way was to wait for Spartacus' noble phantasm to activate and self-destruct. The second method was to use the instant kill ability of the demon eyes of death perception to directly ignore everything and kill Spartacus. Of course, if one had the ability to directly destroy Spartacus' body, it could be said that he was killed instantly. Currently, Spartacus had not accumulated enough magic to self-destruct. However, Fergus had a noble phantasm that was enough to destroy 3 mountains. However, Fergus did not know about this. Moreover, his noble phantasm might not be able to kill Spartacus instantly. Fergus wanted to release his noble phantasm, but at the moment, Fergus was trapped by Spartacus, who was changing rapidly. In terms of attributes, other than Spartacus' durability being higher than Fergus, the rest of Spartacus' ability points were either the same or lower than Fergus. Coincidentally, Spartacus' agility was 2 levels lower than Fergus. Fergus also discovered this in the following battle with Spartacus. Therefore, after a few rounds of fighting with Spartacus, he used his skills to trip Spartacus and get behind him. Then, he took the opportunity to distance himself from Spartacus. Ha! Oppressor! Spartacus got up from the ground and shook his head. He then found Fergus, who was not far behind him. Then, Spartacus excitedly raised his iron sword and rushed towards Fergus. Spiral, get ready. Fergus calmly raised his neon sword as he looked at Spartacus, who was running towards him. Fergus shook his head helplessly as he looked at Spartacus, who was 5 meters tall and had accumulated mana due to his injuries. It's my misfortune to be able to meet you. Indeed, as an enemy, Spartacus was an incomparable headache because he couldn't be killed by ordinary means. Well, even as an ally, he was a headache. All in all, Fergus had had enough. He wanted to end this berserker completely. Fergus focused all his mana into the neon sword and even began to overdraw his spiritual base. After all, Fergus' mana was E. Fergus was afraid that he could not kill this thing. Taste the real neon sword. Just like Ibaraki Duji's noble phantasm, the neon sword emitted its last colorful light. Even Hercules, Finn, and Dilmun stopped fighting. Maeve, who was at the back of the army, did the same. The 4 of them turned their attention to Fergus and Spartacus. Ah! Oppressor, oh! The light covered the ground. Chapter 532. Boom! The sound of a nuclear explosion came from the east of Chicago, and the storm raged. Wuming and Rama both stabilized their bodies and squinted at the scene filled with sand and dust. After Atlanta left, Wuming and Rama did not really go to watch the classic duel between Achilles and Hector. Instead, they ran along the edge of Chicago toward the Celtic army in the east of the city. In the end, before they could even reach the Celtic army, a violent explosion occurred. The power of the explosion was so great that it even completely destroyed the east wall of Chicago, giving people the feeling that there were no walls in the east of Chicago. Of course, whether it was Denver, Alexandria, or Chicago, there were no such things like ancient walls. All of them were built by various forces during this period of time. Wuming and Rama looked at each other, and the 2 quickly ran forward. Because of the strong hurricane caused by the big explosion, there was basically no sand and dust around, so the scene could be said to be clear to Wuming and Rama at a glance. In front of the 2 of them was a huge crater of nearly 100 square kilometers, but because it was too big, they could only estimate, but it was definitely more than 50 square kilometers. The depth of the crater was needless to say. The distance between the deepest part of the crater and the ground was about 50 meters, and maybe it was even deeper. Wuming thought that if such a crater fell on Earth, humans would probably end up like the dinosaurs. The ground on the edge of the crater was unusually smooth, and there were no impurities. It was completely the product of the downward compression of the soil by the explosion. In the center of the crater, there was a lake full of water, and the lake water was still rising. East of Chicago was Lake Michigan. At this moment, such a big explosion directly connected this huge crater to Lake Michigan. There were no traces of soldiers or servants on the scene, and Wuming's perception was temporarily disabled. There was no doubt that the army brought by Maeve was directly blown into ashes by the explosion. As for the servants who were fighting here, they were probably in danger. Wu Ming frowned. He was a little worried about Maeve. Even if the servants were killed, they would just retreat to the martyr's palace. However, Wu Ming was still worried. Because the air here was full of chaotic magic, Wu Ming's perception was also disturbed by these chaotic magic. It was not that he could not perceive anything, but the difficulty of perception was greatly increased. This terrible explosion, which powerful servant's noble phantasm is it? Rama said with lingering fear. Even he did not have the confidence to say that he could survive the explosion that covered an area of nearly 100 square kilometers. After all, a servant was much stronger than an ordinary person, but without a defensive noble phantasm or skills, they would also directly leave. If he did not have the golden armor, he would have to use of his noble phantasm, he would have to use his noble phantasm to survive. Of course, if Rama released his noble phantasm, he would be able to survive. Even if he did not die, he would be dead at least, he would be dead. All in all, if that was really the case, Rama would definitely not feel good. After Rama finished speaking, Wu Ming sighed. I'm afraid that except for Maeve, all the servants present have left. After all, this explosion was in the Celtic army. Not to mention that the army was completely wiped out, Wu Ming still could not find any servants. As for why Wu Ming knew that Maeve was fine, it was because Wu Ming was worried about her. Wu Ming's master was Maeve, so naturally, there was a contractual connection between them. Wu Ming naturally knew whether Maeve had left or not. Previously, by relying on this connection, Wu Ming knew that Maeve had come to Chicago. Suddenly, Rama said, "What is that?" Rama pointed to the lake below the giant pit that was still rising. Wu Ming followed Rama's gaze. In the middle of the lake, a large rock that was emitting red light floated up. However, Wu Ming always felt that the stone with red light was so familiar. Oh my God, that was not a stone with red light. It was clearly Hercules who was activating the 12 trials, God Hand. It was said that Spartacus was difficult to deal with, but compared to Hercules, it was simply insignificant. Hercules' 12 trials, God Hand, could be said to be a real resurrection. Even if his head was chopped off, or his whole body was crushed, as long as the noble phantasm was activated, Hercules' whole body would be like steel that was just out of the furnace, emitting red light and began to reconstruct his body. Not to mention, it would also increase the resistance of the cause of death. Hercules was the real difficult to deal with. Wu Ming fought for a whole day to retrieve Hercules' Berserker class card. In Winterwood City, the new 7 Knights and the Dark King Arthur had to work together to kill Hercules. From this, one could see how tenacious Hercules was. Fortunately, Hercules was a berserker. Otherwise, if Hercules knew how to use his brain, it would be a disaster. In an instant, Wu Ming flew up and rushed to Hercules, who was still recovering his body. Rama did not stop Wu Ming. In Rama's opinion, facing an enemy, one should be ruthless, not to mention that this was a servant from Greece. However, this would disappoint Rama. Wu Ming would not waste his effort to kill Hercules. Not to mention how difficult it was to kill him, moreover, now was not the time to waste on him. The reason why Wu Ming rushed to Hercules was to trap him. Wu Ming arrived above Hercules. Along with the crisp sound of chains, several pseudo-heavenly locks were taken out by Wu Ming and tied to Hercules. Heavenly locks targeted servants with divinity, and Hercules' divinity was as high as a class. However, Wu Ming was very clear about one thing. Even if heavenly locks could only trap Hercules for a short time, heavenly locks were only able to suppress Hercules. The stronger the divinity, the tighter the heavenly locks would be. However, Hercules' strength was as high as A+. In Wu Ming's opinion, Hercules was fully capable of breaking the heavenly locks. In that case, let alone these pseudo-heavenly locks. However, Wu Ming was only holding on to the idea of stalling for time. Subsequently, Wu Ming took out a lot of pseudo-heavenly locks that were stored in his noble phantasm. He only left one pseudo-heavenly lock and tied the rest to Hercules. In this case, it would take a long time to use only his strength. Wu Ming looked at the chain mummy in front of him and nodded as if he was very satisfied with his work of art. Subsequently, Wu Ming buried Hercules in the huge pit, which could be said to be the bottom of the lake. After that, Wu Ming and Rama looked for Maeve. Well, first of all, they had to ignore Rama's gaze. Chapter 533. Wu Ming searched along the edge of the crater and soon found Maeve. After all, Wu Ming could feel from the contract that Maeve was not hurt at all. That meant that she was not in the range of the explosion just now. At the very least, she was not hurt. Naturally, she was outside the crater. With Wu Ming and Rama's acceleration, it was easy for them to go from the edge of the crater to the other side. It only took them a few minutes. At that moment, the celestial bowl that was pulling Maeve's carriage had fallen to the ground. It seemed that it was affected by the explosion. The carriage that was originally gorgeous and dignified had become a little tattered. However, at least it did not seem to be damaged internally. Rama came to the front of the celestial bowl and squatted down to check on the two celestial bowls. Wu Ming was slightly stunned when he saw that. Then, he recalled something. It seemed like Rama was quite a caring big boy. At that moment, Maeve suddenly flew out of the carriage. That's right. She flew out and landed in Wu Ming's arms. Wu Ming wondered how Maeve could fly into Wu Ming's arms in a straight line. Wouldn't you fall because of gravity? Newton was about to cry. In short, Wu Ming hugged Maeve, who was flying toward him. Little sigh, you're finally here. You almost couldn't see me. Maeve looked at Wu Ming pitifully. Of course, if Maeve changed her smile into a cry, the effect would be better. This must be your wife, Cylinder. I'm really envious. Romo stood up and looked at the couple who were hugging each other lovingly. He was filled with emotion. Rama was naturally envious of the couple who could be together. It was unlike him and Sito, who could not see each other because of the curse. However, Wu Ming was very helpless. How could you tell that this was a loving hug? It was obviously my Fu who suddenly flew out, and I subconsciously hugged her, okay? However, since he had accepted Maeve, a hug was nothing. Asterisk cough cough asterisk. Speaking of which, Maeve, what's going on here? Wu Ming asked. On the other hand, Rama was all ears. After all, such a huge explosion was very attractive. This is what happened. Maeve began to tell the story. After Fergus broke the city gate, Hector left while Hercules appeared. Finn and Dilmaud held Hercules back. However, Spartacus appeared and Fergus and Spartacus went against each other. Maeve, of course, was to watch the battle. Following that, there was no progress in the battle between Hercules, Finn, and Dilmaud. It was just a back-and-forth exchange of blows. Although Finn and Dilmaud couldn't defeat Hercules in a one-on-one fight, the two of them were able to fight Hercules to a draw for the time being. As for the battle between Fergus and Spartacus, it was a one-sided battle. Wu Ming felt that something was wrong. He knew the effect of Spartacus' noble phantasm. Soon after, Fergus saw that Spartacus was getting more and more spirited as he fought. Spartacus had transformed into a 5-meter-tall monster. Moreover, he was still transforming into a monster. Fergus decided to activate his relic immediately. Then, Spartacus exploded. Wu Ming shook his head bitterly. As expected, nothing good ever came out of this guy's capture. Rama tilted his head awkwardly. It was his fault. However, the young Rama king would never admit his mistake. Asterisk cough cough asterisk as Maeve was the furthest away and had the protection of the ox cart, she was not hurt. However, the two divine bulls were in trouble. These two divine bulls were not Achilles' immortal horses. Now, all their bones were broken and they were about to leave the stage. Fortunately, it was a noble phantasm, so they did not have to worry too much about it. After Wuming and Rama arrived, Maeve removed the noble phantasm. The divine bulls and the ox cart turned into mana particles and disappeared. Is Berserker's noble phantasm that powerful? Rama asked. It was normal for a powerful heroic spirit to have a powerful noble phantasm. However, Spartacus was just a rebellious gladiator. To put it bluntly, he was just a rebellious slave. Moreover, he was a slave who did not succeed in his rebellion and was quickly executed. No matter how one looked at it, such a person should not have such a powerful noble phantasm. He might be an exception. However, I've seen his noble phantasm before. Even if it exploded, it wouldn't be this powerful. Wuming put Maeve down from his arms, ignoring her dissatisfied expression. Then, Wuming looked at the lake behind him that was about to be filled. However, with Master's 3 command incantations and Fergus' noble artifact charging Spartacus, it's not hard to imagine how much damage it could cause. Although almost 100 square kilometers was huge, if Karna and Wuming were to fight, thousands of square kilometers of land could be affected. That was also the reason why Wuming had asked Karna and Zhou to fight in the northwest part of the Cordillera Mountains. There were fewer people there and it was far away from the battlefield. Otherwise, they would be affected by the battle. Command spells. Noble phantasm charging. Rama and Maeve repeated Wuming's words. That's right. Wuming nodded his head. Spartacus' noble phantasm, crashing warmonger, is a permanent noble phantasm. It can convert the damage it receives into mana and store it in its body. It can increase its ability value and change its body. Finally, when the mana is full, it will self-destruct and launch a destructive impact. After explaining, Wuming paused and thought for a while. I think Demetrius must have used the command incantation to give the command to unleash the greatest power of the noble phantasm 3 times. It strengthened Spartacus' noble phantasm. In addition to Fergus' continuous attacks and the overcharging of Spartacus' noble phantasm, it caused Spartacus to reach the critical point and self-destruct before it could transform into a monster. Rama and Maeve thought for a while and realized that this was the most suitable explanation for the current situation. However, I think Fergus' noble phantasm had a huge impact on the situation here. Maeve smiled. What do you mean? Wuming asked. Maeve then told Wuming about the neon sword that seemed to have been infused with all its power. Does that mean it's the same as Ibaraki Duji? Wuming touched his chin. It seems like they've all left the battlefield. Needless to say, Fergus was the closest to Spartacus and was designated to leave the battlefield. As for Finn, Dilmund, and even Hercules, they had spent a lot of time repairing their bodies. It was likely that the 2 of them had also been forced out of the battlefield during the explosion. Don't we need to care about Hercules? Rama asked. He knew that Wuming did not kill Hercules. He only tied Hercules up and buried him. Don't worry about that guy for now. He's no different from leaving the battlefield. Wuming waved his hand. After all, it was not easy for Hercules to break free from the pseudo-sky lock that was almost the same as the real sky lock. Just when Wuming was about to check on Achilles, a dark purple ripple suddenly appeared. Chapter 534. The portal has been activated. Wuming was shocked. That's right, this was Wuming's portal. There's no time to explain. Come in quickly. Wuming said as he rushed into the portal. That's right, he rushed in. It was obvious how anxious Wu Ming was. Romo seemed to have thought of something and quickly rushed in as well. Maeve looked at the two of them rushing in. She blinked her eyes and walked in gracefully. Then, the portal closed. After passing through the portal and arriving on the other side, Maeve found herself in the belly of a ship. Then, a rather strange scene appeared before Maeve's eyes. Wu Ming was holding the Holy Grail in one hand and a spear in the other. He placed the spear on the neck of a yellow-haired guy whose face was pale with fright. Next to the yellow-haired guy was a girl with pinkish-purple hair. She was holding a magic wand with a nervous expression. The beast-eared girl with green hair was aiming an arrow at the girl's head. If the girl with the magic wand made any strange movements, Maeve believed that the beast-eared girl's arrow would definitely pierce through her head. Behind Wu Ming was Romo. However, at this moment, Romo was holding a girl who looked almost exactly like him. Rama's face was filled with nervousness as he kept calling out names like Cedo, Cedo. However, from the looks of it, Romo seemed to be unable to see the girl at all. He was like a blind person who could only rely on touch. However, from the looks of it, there seemed to be a problem with Romo's perception. Although on the surface, Romo could accurately touch Cedo, at this moment, Romo gave off the feeling that he was touching air. As for the girl who seemed to be called Cedo, she was already unconscious. This made my Fu daydream. If that girl was me, would Xiao Sai be as anxious as she is? This was a girl's heart. However, Wu Ming was not paying attention to Maeve at the moment and did not know what she was thinking. Wu Ming was only paying attention to the yellow-haired guy. In any case, you're someone who entered the martyr's palace. Can't you have a little backbone? With that, Wu Ming rubbed the tip of his spear on Aisen's neck. However, Wu Ming's result was Aisen's howl. Squeak squeak. Aisen's face turned pale and his hands were still trembling. Don't kill me," Aisen said in a trembling voice. Looking at Aisen in such a state, Medea, or Lily looked at Aisen with worry and disappointment. Sir Aisen, after seeing such a traitorous witch, Wu Ming finally understood why Medea, who was abandoned by Aisen, would choose to follow him again. Because Medea was in the form of a girl's dream of a girl. Wu Ming shook his head. A guy like that was not worth his time. However, Wu Ming still did not lower the tip of his spear from Aisen's neck. Then, Wu Ming turned to look at Rama. Rama, can't you sense Cedo? Wu Ming frowned. Although he had learned about the so-called curse from Rama, he did not expect the curse to be so powerful. Now, not to mention not being able to see, even the contact between the two of them, and even their own perception, had become erroneous. This curse of never being together was not just for show. He did not know how a female monkey could place such a curse on Rama and Cedo. That's right. Even if Cedo and I were to hug each other, we would not be able to see or sense each other. Rama no longer referred to himself as you. At this moment, Rama was like a person who was chasing after hope. In the end, he realized that the hope was despair. Once Cedo and I get too close, one of our powers and presence will gradually fade until they leave. Tears rolled down Rama's cheeks. As for which party would disappear, there was no doubt that it would be the weaker party. Wu Ming recalled the scene when he came back through the portal released by Atlanta. At that time, Cedo was not restrained by any chains. However, there was no guarantee that Medea's magic did not restrict her. However, even so, Cedo could not stand up at that time as if she was severely injured. At that time, Wu Ming sensed that Cedo's magic power was insufficient, or rather, it was severely lacking. At this moment, looking at the many injuries on Cedo's body, as well as the faintly discernible signs of his spirit base disappearing, how could Wu Ming not know what was going on? From being imprisoned on Alcatraz Island to this Argo, until now, Cedo had been in a state of abuse. That we did not do anything to Miss Cedo. Please. Please believe us. Lord Ison only wanted to use Miss Cedo as a hostage, Medea said weakly. If that was the case, the injuries on Cedo's body were caused before he was captured on Argo. It was not unreasonable. It was common for the Celts to beat people half to death when they captured them, and they did not have the habit of healing their captives. In other words, Beowulf did not know how to heal at all, and he did not realize that he should heal Cedo. In short, that guy was dead. Let's not care about him. Then, Wuming felt that something was wrong. Medea was the disciple of the goddess of magic, Hecate. She had many healing methods, so why didn't she heal Cedo? However, Medea seemed to have seen through Wuming's question and answered it in advance. Miss Cedo has always refused me to heal her, and she said something like, even if I die, I don't want to be a burden to Lord Rama. As if recalling the scene when Cedo said those words, Medea was a little depressed. She also wanted to sacrifice herself for the people she loved like Cedo did, but Ison, while Medea was distracted, Wuming frowned in distress. However, he began to laugh bitterly in his heart. So, if the other party did not want to heal, wouldn't you forcefully heal her? How gentle are you? However, if I didn't see wrongly, Ison wanted to use Cedo and the Holy Grail to summon the demon god Pillar. Wuming narrowed his eyes and looked at Ison, who was so frightened that he could not speak. When Wuming said those words, Rama instantly raised his head with anger in his eyes. Rama was slower than Wuming by a bit. When he arrived, Wuming had already seized the Holy Grail and restrained Ison and Medea with Atlanta. It was also Rama's arrival that caused the extremely weak Cedo to fall into a coma. Following Wuming's instructions, Rama stumbled and found Cedo through Cedo's position that was left in his eyes. However, it did not work. Rama could not see Cedo at all, nor could he touch Cedo. However, he did not give up and kept calling out Cedo's name. How could a man who loved his wife not be enraged when he found out that his wife had almost been used as a sacrifice? Bang! Chapter 535. Bang! Wuming moved his spear away from Ison's neck and blocked Rama's indestructible blade. Under the blade of the indestructible blade was Ison, who was paralyzed on the ground. However, Demetrius, who made a little movement, was stopped by Atlanta's arrows. Calm down, Rama. Wuming tried to persuade Rama gently. You want me to calm down? The guy who almost turned Cedo into a demon god Pillar is right in front of me. How can I calm down? Rama's eyes were burning with flames as he stared at Ison fiercely as if he wanted to eat Ison alive. We are friends, right? If so, listen to my advice. Ison is still useful, so don't kill him for the time being. Otherwise, Wuming, who had already snatched the Greek Holy Grail, would have already made his move. Rama looked at Wuming and nodded. He then continued to stare at Ison fiercely. Maeve, please do me a favor. Wuming waved at Maeve, who looked like she was watching a family drama. Yes. Maeve smiled and came to Wuming's side. After that, Wuming took out a lot of healing potions from his precious artifact space. He then opened the teleportation door and let Maeve bring Cedo away for the time being. After all, if Cedo stayed with Rama any longer, he would disappear soon. After Wuming told Maeve about various things, Maeve carried Cedo into the teleportation door. Thank you very much, Holy King. No, surrender. Rama said sincerely to Wuming. It was an eye-opener for Wuming to be able to make the proud and arrogant Rama, who often threw tantrums, apologize so sincerely. Since you are able to call me by my name, it means that we are friends, right? As he spoke, Wuming placed the Holy Grail into the golden ripple under Ison's gaze. He then extended his hand to Rama. Although Wuming treated Rama as a friend when Reeve shook hands with Rama, he did not expect that. Yes, that's right, my friend. Then, Rama and Wuming held each other's hands tightly. Then, don't attack Ison for the time being, alright? Wuming glanced at Ison, causing Ison to shuffle backwards in fright. After all, Ison was currently sitting on the ground. Sure. After all, this person had saved his wife, Sidwa. Moreover, this person was also his friend. Thus, Rama would naturally listen to him. As Rama spoke, he glared at Ison and no longer looked at him. Otherwise, the anger in his heart would not dissipate. Although Rama had promised Wuming to spare Ison's life for the time being, he wasn't the kind of person who would forgive someone who almost sacrificed his wife. It was also because of Wuming's face. Otherwise, even if Gadotsi was here, with Rama's childish temper, he would have used the indestructible blade to slash Ison. Yes, the kind that even their own mother wouldn't be able to recognize. So, Ison, now you are our captive. Wuming smiled and narrowed his eyes, which made Ison and even Demetrius feel a chill. In the sky, the Argo was moving towards Alexandria. On the Argo, Ison was controlling the Argo alone at the helm. If one didn't look at Ison's livid face and Atlanta behind him, who was holding the heavenly bow and staring at Ison as if he was her prey, then Ison's situation was not that bad. Demetrius, who was originally following Ison, was at the bow with Wuming and Rama, explaining the current situation of the Greek side. In short, after sending out Hercules, Hector, and the captive Spartacus, we only have Ison, Atlanta, and me left. Wuming did not look at Demetrius. He just looked ahead as if he was experiencing the feeling of flying in a boat. As for Rama, he sat cross-legged alone on the deck behind Wuming and Demetrius with his eyes closed, as if everything had nothing to do with him until they reached their destination, Alexandria. This was Wuming's purpose. Through Ison, he drove the Argo to Gadotsi and others' gathering place, Alexandria. At this moment, only Rome was left on this continent, and it was now being restrained by Gadotsi and others. This time, the battle against Greece was also messed up because of Spartacus' self-destruction. Although Finn, Dilmund, and Fergus had all left the stage, Silent Noise had taken the opportunity to imprison Hercules. She had also captured Ison and Demetrius, so overall, it was still a good outcome. As for Achilles and Hector, Wuming did not disturb them, just like he did not disturb Karna and Ajo. Now, as long as he got the Holy Grail of Rome, this singularity would be over. With that in mind, Wuming let out a long sigh as he looked at the clouds in the sky. At this moment, because Wuming and Rama did not reply, Demetrius waited there. Because waiting was boring, Demetrius would look at Ison from time to time, but every time, she would turn her head away in an instant. She was very nervous. She should be afraid of being misunderstood by Wuming and Rama. However, how could Wuming and Rama not notice it? Ahem. I already know the specific situation. Wuming clenched his fist and put it on his mouth and coughed. This scared little Medea so much that she trembled and almost cried. Don't worry, I won't do anything to Ison. Wuming shook his head helplessly, trying to calm Demetrius down. But, you cast such a vicious curse on Sir Ison. As she spoke, Demetrius looked like she was about to cry. Isn't it obvious? Wuming said with a bitter smile. I don't believe that Ison will be obedient. After all, he's a hero who can leave his name in the martyr's palace. Although Ison was weak, at least he was invincible when it came to piloting a ship. It could be seen from the fact that Wuming did not feel the slightest tremor when he stood at the bow of the ship. Moreover, the existence that could be chosen by the two great restraints and dragged into the martyr's palace, regardless of whether it was a hero or an anti-hero, would definitely not be the same as ordinary people. Wuming could not be sure if Ison would betray him or do something else when Wuming and the others attacked Rome. Therefore, Wuming planted a lot of complicated rune tactics in Isen's body. Then, he told Demetrius and Isen that as long as Wuming willed it, Isen would experience what it meant to be in a living hell. Because what he said was true, Isen and Demetrius believed him. Moreover, when Wuming planted those complicated rune tactics, Demetrius was beside him. No matter how much Isen cried and howled, Isen, who was being held down by Rama, had his body implanted with those tactics in front of Demetrius, who was being watched by Atlanta. However, Wuming did not know anything about curses, nor did he study them. So, what he said was a complete lie. However, no matter who saw those extremely complicated and mysterious rune tactics, they would not doubt Wuming's words. In the eyes of others, it was an extremely vicious curse. As long as you are obedient, nothing will happen. Wuming looked at Demetrius with a smile. Demetrius could only nod helplessly. After all, they could not defeat Wuming and the others. Chapter 536. Since Rama used him as a laborer, Isen's sailing speed was still very fast. Wuming estimated that it would only take about 10 minutes to reach Alexandria. That. Demetrius, who had been staying beside Wuming, spoke hesitantly. What's wrong? Wuming looked at Demetrius and asked. Just tell me what you want to know. There's no need to beat around the bush. After that, Demetrius took a deep breath and asked the question. Excuse me, the purplish black hole just now, was it a teleportation magic? Wuming was stunned for a moment before he realized what she meant. The purplish black hole that Demetrius was referring to was undoubtedly the teleportation door that Wuming came to the Argo. That's a magic trick that I learned from the other world. It's called gate. Gate. Demetrius repeated the word as she pondered. The effect is that based on the place that I've been to or the place that I've seen, I can create a teleportation door anywhere. Wuming briefly explained how to use the gate. Anywhere. Demetrius was obviously shocked. Pay attention to the premise. It must be a place that I've been to or the place that I've seen. Wuming knocked Demetrius's little head. This scene was extremely similar to a teacher scolding a disobedient student. Whoa! But, even so, it's still very powerful. Demetrius exclaimed as she hugged her little head and cried. Then, are there any side effects or other disadvantages? Demetrius raised her little hand. At this moment, she was also super interested in magic. There are no side effects at all. Well, if there's a disadvantage, it's that it can't be instantly teleported. Wuming looked at Demetrius with a perfect smile. At this moment, Demetrius's little head was filled with question marks. After all, you have to open the teleportation door first and then walk in. If you use this trick in a direct battle, it would definitely be useless. Also, if you use this skill in battle, if you can't close it in time, the enemy can also go through the portal. After all, Demetrius could only teleport by herself. That way, she would not be able to bring the enemy along with her. You're exaggerating. Even if that's the case, the magic you've learned from the other world is already very powerful. As long as you've been to a place before, or even a place as far as your eyes can see, it's really a powerful magic trick. Demetrius was slightly dazed. Indeed, this otherworld's magic is indeed very powerful. Either it's impossible to use it at all, but once you learn it, not only is the mana consumption low, but you can also move many people. It's much more useful than ordinary spatial magic. That's amazing. Medea said enviously. Do you want to learn? Wuming suddenly asked when he saw the envious look on Medea's face. Is it really possible? Demetrius shouted excitedly. Of course. You're not Isen. I have a good impression of you. Wuming was right. Such a naive little princess, because Ison went to the palace of the beauty goddess to make a wish, she fell in love with Ison and her life was ruined. Regarding this, Wuming naturally did not mind teaching her the portal. Of course, the prerequisite was that Demetrius could learn it. But, we're still enemies. Demetrius began to hesitate. It has to be said that even if she had the reputation of a traitor, which, the current Demetrius was undoubtedly an obedient and sensible princess. Because of the hostile relationship between the two of them, she was worried about whether Wuming teaching her magic tricks would be inappropriate. She was really a cute little princess. With the current situation, do you think we can still be considered enemies? Wuming teased. Indeed. Now we're captives. Demetrius smiled awkwardly. Then, are you willing to learn this magic trick from me, Demetrius? Wuming looked at Demetrius with great respect. Yes, I'm willing, teacher. Demetrius gripped her staff tightly with a serious expression. At this moment, Ison seemed to have been removed from Demetrius's mind. Demetrius only wanted to learn the portal magic trick. Then let us begin. Immediately after, a strange scene appeared on the deck. Wuming and Demetrius stood facing each other with their eyes closed. Wuming's hand was placed on Demetrius's head. Both of them did not move at all. This piqued Rama's interest. My friend, what are you doing? However, Wuming did not immediately answer Rama. After a moment, Wuming opened his eyes and put down his hand on Demetrius's head. It's just a simple memory-sharing magic trick. After all, it's more efficient this way. Alright, actually it was Wuming who did not know how to teach. Even he himself used the game scroll to learn the portal magic trick. However, it was not impossible to reverse the process. However, Wuming had never thought of teaching anyone and no one had asked Wuming. Therefore, Wuming did not research on how to teach others the portal magic trick. After reading the nameless spellbook for a period of time, Wuming did not look at it anymore. It was fine as long as they could use it. Moreover, Wuming did not dare to guarantee that people from other worlds could learn the magic trick of the game Yggdrasil. Wuming also chose to teach Demetrius this magic trick because she was a little girl who was passionate about magic. Without any ambiguity, Wuming and Demetrius' relationship was only that of a teacher and a student. Rama did not say anything else. After all, he did not know much about magic and was not very interested in it. Therefore, he walked to the bow of the ship and looked at the scenery. As for Wuming, he looked at Demetrius who still had her eyes closed. At that moment, Wuming's heart was filled with anticipation. Could the magic trick of the game Yggdrasil be learned by the miraculous hero spirit of this world? Wuming was very curious. After about 10 seconds, Demetrius opened her eyes. Her eyes were as beautiful as gemstones. His eyes were brimming with excitement and joy. The result was obvious. From the looks of it, you should have learned teleportation gate, right, Demetrius? Wuming smiled at Demetrius, pleased. Yes, teacher. I have successfully learned this magic trick. Demetrius shouted excitedly like a small animal. Thank you very much, teacher. Demetrius bowed deeply to Wuming to express her gratitude. For Demetrius, who was very interested in magic, being able to learn the magic trick of another world was a great favor. Just as Wuming wanted to say something, Rama, who was at the bow of the ship, spoke. What? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.